Wanted to take a second before the video started. No one in this roundtable were privileged individuals. We handpicked a few people based off of temperament. We wanted to give an open mic setting for the members in this private event to ask questions where we would respond if there was any confusion to the community post Q&A. We have new information in this video and a new sneak peek of the Runescribe class with 3 hard specialization masteries to review. This video is 3 hours long, so I hope you enjoy the podcast themed video. We'll see you soon in the next one.
So you guys are welcome to ask any and all questions, any follow-up questions, and any discussion during this roundtable. I only ask that the first hour be specifically related to Interbellum, just because of the time frames for the people that are involved. As I stated, I am perfectly okay with opinions that are contrary to our things that we're talking about. So if you disagree, feel free to say. If you have suggestions, feel free to say. I am responsible for the balance team on the staff, and I deal with that all the time. So I'm all about it. Personally, I am an upfront, honest person. I don't like lying. So if I can't tell you something, like if I'm not allowed, I'll let you know that. If I don't know the answer, I'll say the same. So if a answer to your question might sound like I'm dodging, it just means that I'm not describing it well enough for you. So just ask me some follow-ups. Promise I'm not dodging it unless I say I can't tell you or I don't know. Hey, it's Kep. And outside that, I will open it to the floor to let people ask whoever their first questions.
And I know this sounds like a round, it's a round robin sort of thing. Anybody can actually go with this and ask anything. So the more engaging you guys are, the better it's going to be for all of us, right? So don't be nervous or scared or anything like that. So I see you lighting up, Cervix.
Yeah, I have a first question. Thanks for doing this. So I know this is probably one you might have a hard time answering, but I'm going to ask it anyways. So Interbellum, is it coming out in 2 weeks or 3 weeks?
Okay. So here's the robot answer that I have to give in chat all the time, which is Interbellum policies that we don't give ATAs. But I can give you some more information. So the primary reason that we did the Q&A was to wake up our testers that we had, our phase 1 and phase 2 testers. We did end up with a lot more people in the Discord and looking than we originally thought that we would get from just having this quiet little announcement inside our Discord. We just we're like on the edge of finishing the server framework for the code, and we're looking to restart phase 3 testing, which will be closed testers. We're going to pull in more people than just our phase 1 and phase 2 testers for that, but it's going to be things like basically we're taking all the code that we had originally and now putting it on the framework now that Azrael is done with, or done enough with the C++ coding that he was talking about in the Q&A. So I would not expect a launch, in 2 weeks or so and stuff like that, but you can expect some people being pulled in, an announcement related to testers and such like that very soon. You can expect as we progress through that, then that just depends on how many things we end up seeing broken, to start having more and more tests. Basically, the idea is to go from like 12 people, 18, 24, 48, so such and so forth, until we get to an open, full, everyone can try for a little bit before we actually launch the server.
So when you say you're going to pull more testers in, you have people already, or can somebody apply to be a tester on the next phase or whatnot?
Everyone will be allowed to apply. Once basically I have the ability for people to log in not using a batch file, basically so they can create their account and I don't have to do it myself, because that's a lot of database work for me for X number of people. There'll be essentially like a kind of like a job posting, right? Interview / thing, a channel where people can answer, I think it's 3 questions that I have, and then the team will choose testers based off of that. All of our phase 1 and phase 2 testers will automatically be approved just because they have tested for us before. But yeah, we will pull in additional people besides those based off of the answer. So anybody that's in this Discord at that time will be able to submit and be the
Okay.
word that means that you're looking at them, because my brain just forgot that word.
An applicant.
Applicable.
About the mass thing, like if you play a tank, will you have more mass? I mean, that's a new
Yes.
mechanic. So how?
So
Example.
mass is a mechanic. So rather than, for example, having several tactics that change the way your CCs work, a good example from Age of Reckoning and Return of Reckoning would be the two-handed Chosen and Knight tactic that makes your punt work differently, right? All components of that have basically been done towards mass. And the primary reason that mass does not exist on gear is so that we can choose which specializations and archetypes have the opportunity for more mass. So yes, tanks have more choices to obtain mass than any other class archetype in the game, simply because they're the ones who want to be snared the least, because they usually don't have any way of breaking them, and they're the ones who usually have things like knockbacks, right? So in general, tanks are considered, not all tanks, but like tanks as a general archetype are considered to be more CC oriented, both offensively and
Yeah.
defensive CCs. So they will have access to more mass. Archetype tactic for all tanks is called stabilize. It literally is just +1 mass, and it's a tank only.
And let's say you're a healer. Can you add like more mass or remove one to get more speed? Or
Yes, there
That's
are
a-
tactics. I showcased a couple of those tactics
Yeah.
in the Renown. There are tactics that will remove your mass to gain other benefits. Some healers have the opportunity to increase mass, and some don't. Some have the ability to sacrifice mass in addition for other things. That just depends on the build. Like, depends on.
So, since we're talking about tanks and defenses and crowd control, a question about armor. Armor is in the statistic, not the gear we're wearing. You mentioned somewhere on the release, the public notes, that to block you don't require a shield.
Correct.
And also said, if I remember correctly, you can increase your block by doubling your armor. So
So what happens is when you block, your effective resistance against that effect. So say someone hits you with some corporeal damage, right? And it's direct corporeal damage. If someone hits you with direct corporeal damage and you block, your armor and corporeal resistance against that attack are doubled.
So you have to block to double?
Yes, your block is basically a % chance to double your defenses against the attack. It reduces the amount of damage you take.
Okay, so you don't double your armor to increase your chances to block.
Correct.
All right, so like, do you start with 1,000? So to double my armor, you go to 2,000 to have better blocking, and then 2,000 becomes 4,000 to increase it more?
Yes, anytime you block, it would increase that stat against that one attack. If you block the attack, it will.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You
against-
say I have to block first, then it doubles my armor. What I'm saying is, do I physically double my armor by drinking a potion, by adding talismans to increase the chances to block, or do they work at the same time?
Your chance to block is based off of, you get 5% for free, and then any tactics or passives that you have will give you block. And of course, block % is a stat that you can find on gear.
Right, okay.
And I'm assuming more on shields for shield tanks.
We actually don't have stats on weapons.
Oh, that's interesting.
What do you have on them then?
So because specializations get different weapons, one for appearance sake, just to have a difference in how a specialization looks to another one, even if they're the same base class. Two, it's also just kind of cool. So some specializations only have one weapon, some have two, some have three. So if we left stats on the weapon, then it would be you would be getting someone's stat benefit just for saying, hey, you're using a two-hander versus this guy is only using a one-hander and no offhand.
Basically used as a
So
stat
basically
stick.
what we did was just took, it's not even a stat stick, it's literally an appearance item.
Okay.
And none of your abilities are based off of what weapon you have equipped because they're all locked into specializations. So we don't have to worry about that either. So all the stats that you would have expected from weapons have just been redistributed across the other armor equipment types.
Okay.
So I'm going to ask something because you already broke the seal at the start of the question before. Do you have what makes your server different than Return of Reckoning? Like, why make another server? Do you have an opinion on how Return of Reckoning is going right now? Does there need to be 2 Warhammer servers? A lot of people think that by having 2, you're just going to split the population and destroy any kind of semblance of a Warhammer community. So maybe you can speak on that a bit.
Sure. At the very beginning, when I said that we only expected like a certain number of people to see our Q&A, and we kind of didn't even like announce it, really, we just announced it on our Discord. So after looking through all of the metrics from various streams, the video itself, and a couple other things, we had roughly, it was somewhere in the 5,500 people who saw the Q&A in some form or another, regardless of whether or not they were there. And I'm sure some of those are the same person watching different instances. But I have always stated to our staff that the player base that is playing on Return of Reckoning or has played on Return of Reckoning before is not the only player base. And the MMO market is severely lacking at the moment in a good PvP MMORPG. One of the reasons that I kind of tripped over my answer at the end of the Q&A and swapped which direction I was going was because I wanted to say that we are making a PvP MMO, and that's because that market sucks right now. It's we don't expect to kill Return of Reckoning. That's not our goal. If it happens, it happens, but that's not on us.
Just a nice byproduct.
And then we don't expect our player bases to only come from Return of Reckoning. So much so that like making the game to a point where you could play the game without ever having played Warhammer Online. So an actual tutorial system input into the game as if it was like some 8-year-old picked up the game the first time is important to us as well.
I got another question. About the anti-zerg mechanic. What's gonna be? Can you go more in depth?
Yes. Part of that answer will be easier to go through when I show you the Runepriest stuff.
Yeah.
But there's several layers to that about preventing the kind of screenshot that Luth has got posted there in Roundtable with hundreds of people grouped up. The first one is the RVR system, which I can't go into a lot of detail, unfortunately, at the moment, but it is designed in a way to where there is multiple areas that you have to take at all times. So much so that a large blob of people, if they tried to stay together for safety, wouldn't be able to actively take the zone against a smaller group of people who are organized enough to split up. The second layer is in the ability system itself. I briefly touched on Zerg busting skills. Every single specialization in the game has one. These are not morales; these are actual just abilities that are designed. Yes, it's just one. Everyone has access to one. And it is designed, each one of them is designed to scale with the number of people that it hits. So if it only hits 6 people, it's not useful. It's a very useless ability when it only has 6 people. But if it starts hitting 48, 50, 60, 90 people in one area, those people are being halved health by one person. Which means a small group can kill 60, 70 people if they're all within like a 30-foot circle of each other. So, and then you've got like the morale that you saw, which is another method of Zerg busting. There's also a couple other interesting things there that affects. So not only is it more difficult to take a zone if you are basically moving as one giant blob, it is not even safe anymore to move as a giant blob.
So are you gonna like add more capturing points, or I mean more place to capture flags and stuff, or it's gonna be the same as the vanilla one, or
It will not be the same, but I can't
yeah,
exactly go into.
yeah.
But
Okay.
yeah,
So, from the
go ahead.
knowledge that I have, you said that if it's a lot of people, one person can get them to half life with one ability. What happens at keeps? You're gonna have 25 people or 40 or 50 people trying to get through a door. You have 5 people inside shooting them.
Yeah.
Yep. So you've got the keep won't be the only way to take the zone. I can say that. I can say that. Keep won't be the only way to take the zone. And the keep won't just be a single door inside of with a single funnel. The art department has stated that they can increase the size of the doors. I don't know if that's true, but they've stated it. And also the keeps won't have like lords, so it's even just taking the keep won't be a specific spot in the keep. It'll be multiple areas in the keep that you have to take in order to keep. And wow, you have to keep
Okay, I
things
mean,
inside the keep.
Okay, yeah. If you guys don't mind, if there's no keep lord and that there's no real reason, we don't have to actually take the keep, and there's other avenues to go, then what's the purpose of the keep itself?
The purpose of the keep is skirting that line. The purpose of the keep is to serve as a respawn point, in addition to respawn teleportation point, and is also responsible for a lot of something that's really important that I can't say.
Now I have a question about that siege breaker abilities. You said smaller scale groups basically means they do more damage to larger scale groups. So what is stopping a warband of 24 splitting up in groups of 6, and I'm basically doing a model bomb per group on the big Zerg?
Nothing. Don't Zerg.
So to bounce off of that,
So,
sorry, go ahead.
but that basically means you're giving them an I win button.
Okay, so like I said, these abilities don't function well if you don't hit a large number of people in a small area. They are basically useless. Whenever we go to see, but also the abilities themselves are opportunity costed against another powerful ability, which means that you can't take them and also something else that's very useful in smaller scale fighting. So the only way to keep people, well, not the only way, a good way to keep people from blobbing up is to remove the primary reason people do it. It's safe. If it's no longer safe, have you ever played Total War Warhammer 3 or any Total War Warhammer?
Oh yeah.
What happens when you take all of your infantry and put them in a giant circle and then someone fires a spell at them?
Yeah, I got you.
So the idea, it's not that we don't want large fights, because it's RVR. We just don't want 96 people in a 30-foot circle. So if you do that, you're dead.
Is there
or
a
at least the opportunity.
resource? Sorry for interrupting you. Is there a resource on this that has to be built
Yes.
like morale, or
No.
is it literally just hit the button and go?
It is 150 action point ability on a 30-second cooldown. If you fire it and you don't kill anyone with it, you wasted a lot of resources.
Yeah, I can kind of see that. I mean, I don't think that's a problem having a warband split into 4 groups of 6. I think that's just might as well just be 6-man groups. So to bounce off of that, do you see RVR being more like solo friendly, group friendly?
Yes.
Warband, is it trying to like, what do you envision like a lake to look like from a player point?
So the balancing point for RVR combat is a warband versus a warband. At that point, the Zerg besting abilities aren't that powerful. They're still okay, but they're not worth the AP. And then you've got, so basically in a, say, 100-foot circle, the warband versus warband would be the balancing point for standard AoE oriented skills. Because of the removal of Zergs that allow, or potentially, that allows smaller groups to interact with these people without having to go and find somebody who happens to be by himself. Since we have opened up more of the zone for RVR, really skirting that line, then travel points are more important. So solo players have methods of interacting there. But like I said, the balancing point for RVR is at the warband level. Everything else is just the farther you go away from that, the farther things
So
get weird.
that makes sense. I mean, but so from a balance perspective, then do you balance a class with the mindset of how it'll perform in a warband or how it performs individually?
Yes.
To which part?
No. Yes.
Both,
The answer is
both.
both. So there are 30. You're gonna know hear this soon, anyways. There are 31 talent points and 69 talents. One of the reasons that you can respec at any point in time inside your specialization is that, of course, some of those are going to be oriented better towards large scale, right? And so pretty much every specialization, not all, but pretty much every specialization has some form of interacting on large scale. And when I say large scale, I do mean warband fighting. And some method of interacting on this, well, usually more method of interacting on small scale 6-man oriented. Also, in comparison to what all of you know, which is Age of Reckoning and Return of Reckoning, using area of effect abilities on a single person doesn't work.
Also,
Area of effect abilities require a minimum of 4 people to be even worth the time to cast, and a minimum of 7 people hitting to even be worth the AP and the time to cast. So if you use area of effect abilities on like low numbers of people, it ain't doing anything.
you brought AP up a couple of times. With what we're familiar with Return of Reckoning and Age of Reckoning, able to regen health and AP and so on and so forth. With your new resources to include AP and health, what is the time to regen once it's spent?
So if you have a basic attack, not every class does. If you have a basic attack, it is 20 AP per second of cast time, and instant cast ability being considered a 1.1 second cast time. Then you also have the AP per second stat from your gear, which goes into that in addition to any AP per second that you're gaining from generally tactics, some passives, and certain buffs that teammates can give you. So the answer to that is 20 per second minimum, and then however much you actually want to focus on that.
So
Um,
with, sorry, go ahead, Fixer.
No, go.
So what I was going to say, I was just going to spitball off of that, is that if it's 20 per second and with the solo versus 28, 48, 98 player I win button, that you said earlier that it would cost like 160. So with
150
that,
AP.
150 APs, thank you. Then that would only be 5 seconds till you can use it again. 5-6 seconds.
That's one of the few abilities that has a cooldown. It does have a 30-second cooldown standard, all of them. Also, a solo player wouldn't be able to take out a Zerg. It would require a couple.
Okay.
Yeah,
Sorry, if I may, because you said about the AoE, it's only worth it when you hit like 3-4 or more people. What's going to happen with classes like the Magus or the Engineer when they're like Grenadiers, 90% is all AoE? And you're fighting a 6-man and you get one guy left, won't those skills be worth anything? Or
Because you have
don't play it?
You have abilities that are single target. I get... So, some things like that. Can I look at the...
Or, like the slow from the Archmage or the slow from the Shaman, which is AoE ground floor target abilities, or Rain of Fire from the Bright Wizard. I mean, you're having a small fight, 6-man, they split up, you want to hit 2 of them, is it going to be worth it? You're going to only to use a single target? So that changed a little bit the whole gameplay as we know it.
As the number of people dwindle on the other side, if there's a lot, so if you're actively using AoE skills because they're useful to be used, as the number of people dwindle, you would swap to your single target skills. And specializations are not split like they are on Return of Reckoning and Age of Reckoning, where there's like a hard specialization for single target, a hard specialization for AoE. If you are a DPS class, one of the hallmarks of a DPS archetype specialization is that they have good single target and good AoE damage in the tree. So, because they don't have a lot of defenses and support and CC, right? Now, for some support classes, that's a problem, but that's because a lot of your output in the other area that you don't have is related to your archetype and not your damage. So, to use your engineer as an example, a Grenadier engineer, which I believe is a DPS, I would have to check. Pretty sure it's a DPS.
It is.
No, I meant like on Interbellum.
Oh, sorry.
It has cleave dots, which cleave is not AoE. And then it has tactics that make those AoE. So when you get to know something without asking. In the fight, once the number of targets dwindle, you can actually swap tactics, because on Interbellum you can swap tactics in combat, and you could remove those AoE tactics and get more damage on the dots.
That was my next question. If you can change them in combat, okay, I'm cool with that.
They do have that effect. Will have a 1-minute cooldown though. You can't do it constantly.
Right. One thing to kind of add to that as well, which you'll also see here in a little bit. No, kind of like with Return of Reckoning or Age of Reckoning and how everybody has a cookie cutter build, right? You're going to have different playstyles per mastery that you have. You're going to have a lot more to work with. Not just say for a Marauder where you go like 11 points to Savagery and then maybe like 3 points or maybe like 9 points into Brutality. It's not like that. You pick a hard mastery, you stick with it, and you guys are gonna have fun with it. So I'm just gonna go back to my hole.
So just to follow on that, now that we're talking about combat and AP and AoE, so is there another MMO or game that you kind of take inspiration from to kind of get an idea of what Interbellum combat will be like? Is it more akin to WoW or a game like Guild Wars 2 or just typical Warhammer combat, or is there something else?
Oh man. So we have pulled inspiration from all over. That's a relatively hard. So it's gonna feel like Warhammer when you play. There's just a couple things that were just terrible designs before. An example of like AoEs being useful as soon as you hit 2 people, which is how it was on Age of Reckoning. And infinite resources is gone. Just infinite resources means that you have to use too many cooldowns. We actively, outside of the class, you're going to see, because there's a specific reason it has cooldowns. Most classes are restricted by their resources, not by cooldowns. That's not just AP; they have other resources. But I mean, we even pulled inspiration from Pokemon. So like, if it had an idea that we could use, we used it. And that actually expands out to the community and our testers. Whenever anyone says an idea, if there's any aspect of the idea that sounds like we can use, we try to see if we can. Just because, yeah, I mean, I play,
Yeah.
I personally play. Actually, not even personally. Every single person on this team that I know plays all kinds of games. And we've gotten all kinds of, hey, this particular system from this game is cool. Can we incorporate it into this class, or can we incorporate it into the game as a whole? And that's kind of why we get to play around with specialization gameplay loops. So certain specializations and classes will play exactly like you know them do from Warhammer, and then others won't.
It sounds very ambitious. Like, is there a fear of like feature creep or just kind of adding too much?
In terms of what I just said, no. I have had to, in Interbellum chat here, kind of tell people when they come up, when they ask for features, being like, don't expect that at launch. That's not our priority. Not saying that we won't do it, but like, we do have a focus of what we want to get done. And that's what we'll do. Just because I know what you're talking about in terms of feature creep. I have watched MMOs and other games promise things forever and ever and ever and never release. So, in terms of systems that we've borrowed from other games, if I can't make it work off of the ability system that we have, we don't use it, even if it's a cool idea.
I have a question a little bit off topic of this story, but this is a question I've been asked a couple of times now from multiple people on Discord themselves. Is there any plan of doing anything about toxic behavior in the game? And with the toxic behavior, I mean like teabagging, puking, stuff like that towards other players.
I mean, I guess it's part of the game.
Hey, Void, that's your question,
Yeah.
not mine.
Yeah, no, I mean, really, at the end of the day, I mean, there's there are ignore functions inside the game. So if you don't want to see that, if you just do like say /ignore on that person altogether or whatnot, you won't have to see like like emotes spamming, things like that. I get that there's toxicity involved with everything, with PvP. More as a standpoint on there, every PvP game has a certain amount of toxicity that's involved with it. If you look at Arc, you look at Rust, you look at all different types out there, you can't really say, hey, can't do this. There are just individuals that make certain decisions with that. If it starts becoming too much of a problem, then we address it at that point. Now, again, being as a PvP game, I'm sure all of you are aware on how very competitive that is for everyone. So, of course, there are going to be 6-mans or other people that maybe if you know somebody on the other side that's a good friend of yours. And so, like, for example, I've done this in other games with a few friends of mine that I play RR. and I will play with them, and we'll take pop shots with each other, and we'll jump on each other. It's just a friendly thing that we do. Now, as far as toxicity goes, it kind of goes out if there's harassment involved, things like that. Again, can't really dictate and say, hey, this is something that you can tell people it's okay to do or not. It's more of a why are you doing it in the first place? And then there are going to be avenues to help mitigate not seeing that. That's more or less my response to it. Now, again, as we get to a live portion of the server and then we start kind of looking at things like that, then we'll address it as we go on. But just being as a realistic approach there, I'm not saying that I condone the fact of maybe corpse jumping or emoting and whatnot. Sometimes it can be fun if it's somebody against somebody that you enjoy playing with. However, the main thing is that when it comes down to it, when we get to that point later on down the road, then we'll address it. So that's really it on my feedback there. And again, that's more of a personal standpoint. I know as we get closer on down, when we start doing the whole launch there, when things start happening, then we'll address it more. But it's hard to say, considering what is happening as of right now, since we're getting a little bit closer to our like phase 3 for the testing. So again, we'll address that later on.
I'll give you an example of what he's talking about. So we've had some people in the Discord that are a little more on the negative to each other's side. And you might have seen a couple days ago where I was messing with Discord functions. We created the hashtag trash talk channel and made it like opt in so that only people could if they wanted to see that kind of stuff they could, because that is part of some people's idea of what good PvP experience is. And then we had a bot set up to block some of it using the Discord's normal functions in the official channels. So when we come across problems like that, because there are people who enjoy it and there are people who don't, the idea is to allow those people to separate without, having to go at each other's throats or bring moderators involved. Hey, it's Lefty.
Ew.
I have a question that's gonna go in a different direction. With the instance dungeons that are in the game right now, it seems to me your game is going to be more baseline, more strictly PvP than PvE, EQ, so on and so forth. How are you, or are you even going to incorporate those dungeons into the game? And if you do, how so?
PvE is not my primary concern at the moment. I did kind of showcase that we have a rough idea of what we want to do related to that, because the game design will be focused, the abilities for the classes and stuff will be focused on PvP. So PvE will have to be designed with those abilities in mind rather than changing the abilities to fix PvE. We have left like areas of design strictly cordoned off for PvE in the future. I use tome tactics as an example. I personally don't know anything about Return of Reckoning's dungeons. I've never stepped foot in one, even when I used to play. Just because that wasn't my cup of tea when I played Warhammer. But an example I used was the example that I tested with. And I had a NPC that was named after me that summoned rams because I'm goofy. And these rams had a knockback that would knock you like 700 feet. And if you didn't have the tome tactic, and if you had the tome tactic equipped, it wouldn't do anything to you. So if you tried to kill the boss without the tome tactic, your tank got punted to Altdorf. And that was also just a silly joke. But I was actually primarily testing the use of tome tactics as a PvE modifying system. And that's also where we put things like Menace. PvE is generally scripted as well. So things specific to PvE encounters can be done inside of an instance that where your abilities would not function the same way as they do outside the instance. If that makes
Okay. So
So you mean there's gonna be PVE like when you launch?
there will
Although
be
you're gonna be PvP centric, can I go in Gombat and do it with my friends if I want to? Can I do some PQs when I level up?
there will be some PQs and some quests when we launch. One of the necessary components of making an MMO is that you have to be able to get from your starting level to your end level entirely solo through PvE, right? That is kind of a requirement. Just because it is possible, because I'm not insane. There are time periods when there won't be enough people. Say you log in at 4 o'clock in the morning, you just kind of want to level a character or something. You have to be able to do that. So we will have PvE when we launch. I'm just saying, don't expect a whole lot of it at launch. That is something that'll come later, or unless I obtain a decent coder that wants to work on PvE. I will do the minimum necessary to make an MMO and focus the rest
Okay.
on PvP.
You are focused on PvP, but eventually, you
Yes.
will work on PvE to have some different experience for other people as well.
Yes.
Since we're on this topic, I'm sorry, just one more question. You've mentioned on the public releases that this is a PvP centric, and you can get all your materials from PvP, like from the crates of goods.
Yes.
So if somebody, it's 4 o'clock in the morning, there isn't any PvP, can they still go and kill bats and scorpions and lizards and whatever and get the mats? Like, there's going to be a dual way of doing it, or if it's 4 o'clock in the morning and there's no PvP, then you have to wait until something happens.
You can obtain things from PvE if you so choose. Yes.
Okay. Crafting. Are y'all gonna basically do it the same way, or is it gonna be your take on it, and how so?
So the two primary crafting professions will still function relatively close to the same. Their outputs will be different. Potions will be different than what you're used to, just because flat stat potions are not interesting.
Can we have an example on that?
And will it also be, you're only allowed this and this? You have to have 3 characters to have all of it, or can one character have everything?
You'll have to have multiple characters if you want to interact with the entire crafting profession, unless you pull your materials out of the boxes. But that's like, and talisman making will have some other things to create other than talismans. There's also a post-launch goal, and I very stress that post-launch. It's not something that's on our head. There was a third profession in the client.
Right,
from
blacksmithing.
Mythic. Yeah. We've touched on that as a team. Like I said, that is post-launch. So you might see a third profession at some point in the future, but not at launch.
I'm ready for some Dowie action.
All right,
Okay.
I'll ask later then.
Yeah, same here.
Okay.
I have a lot
Yeah.
of questions gaming wise, so
I'll be here.
I'll wait.
I'll be
Okay.
here.
Okay.
I have pretty much 6 hours and 10 minutes, so I
Jesus.
highly doubt you guys will take that much time of my time.
We'll
Might,
see.
who knows?
We'll
Yeah,
see
we'll
what we
see.
can do about that.
But I have to stay here and record all of it, so I have to be
Yes,
here.
you do.
Yes.
Do your job.
So, what I'm about to show you is something that I had to scramble to put together in like an hour or a day. because it was based off votes, and I can only give you what you voted and not the rest of it. I had to strip all artwork from it that's not in the client or owned by Interbellum. So that was fun. So it's going to be a little bit less pretty than I show to team, because we use a visualization of things for staff, just because giant blocks of text aren't as great at explaining things as pretty pictures to go along with it, right? Or in the case of this, a conversation. So I can't show you gameplay footage either, because that's also restricted by art. So what I'm posting in Private Roundtable is a page. It's a visualized builder for the Runescribe, which includes all 3 specializations of the Runepriest. There is a couple things that are wrong in the code. For example, you can put points in multiple trees. You can't do that in game, so you'll have to control yourself on that. And like I said, the background pictures are black just because I can't show the artwork, because I mostly, when I show this to team members, I put pretty pictures from Games Workshop of these classes, right? So yeah.
So here we can only put points in one tree, right?
Yes, the builder will let you, because I did, I put this up and like I copied over some code.
That's clear. That's clear. I'm just clarifying. In the live version, when it comes out, we only put points in one of those 3 trees.
Yes, you actually will only even see one of these when you choose your specialization. You won't see the other 2 when you're on the screen.
Looking at this, and we're able to pick tactics. Are tactics not going to be upon level now?
I'm going to go through that right now to explain some of this. This is one of the reasons why this isn't public right now. So everything on those first 2 rows that already has a point spent in it, that's the stuff you're going to get for free. You will have all of that by level 10. That is 8 free abilities, 4 free tactics, a weapon skill just to show you that they use different weapons, and 1 morale of each slot. So you basically have enough to fill everything that you get for free, or every slot you have something there for it. Those 4 tactics that you get for free are generally less useful than the tactics that you buy in the tree, because duh. And they're also generally designed to make they're more noob friendly or lower gear friendly. They're designed to be replaced at some point. I don't know how many of you actually watched that 7-minute video that I posted in Private Roundtable yesterday.
For credits.
But they're designed to be replaced. They're still good. They're just designed to be replaced in a lot of builds, just because you get them for free. You guys picked the class that is probably the least like Age of Reckoning and Return of Reckoning you could have picked. Runepriests on Age of Reckoning have literally no identity. Originally, we had, in our phase 2 testing, which Luigi knows, we took their 3 mechanics they did kind of have about the Oath runes that had the activated abilities, the Master Rune system that they had, and the stat swap system that they had, and we made those. We made that into their tree, but I overcomplicated it in our tests. So when we went to make this, we threw all that out the window. So it looks nothing like Age of Reckoning, unfortunately, because a lot of our other classes have at least one spec that looks, close to something you recognize. This is one of the few classes that there's nothing conservative we could have saved, sadly. But I get to showcase some interesting things. So this class uses all
Heartspect. You will have that specific playstyle.
3 categories of abilities. They have Grungni rune abilities, Falea rune abilities, and Grimnir rune abilities. Whenever they use any ability here, they put that rune on cooldown, so they can't use any other ability from that same category for 8 seconds at default value. They have almost all of their abilities are either no action point cost or lower action point cost because of that shared cooldown system and because of the next thing I'm going to say. They all have an ability called Rune Augmentation. It's that third ability on the top there. It's off the GCD, and it causes your next ability to be used to be Rune Augmented and not trigger those 3 ancestor runes that I just described. So the base gameplay for Runepriests, or Runescribes, which goes to all 3, is whenever you basically are controlling which one of your abilities go on cooldown and when they don't. And when you press that button, the ability gets better. And that's at the cost of AP. And you can do that repeatedly. There's no cooldown on that rune augmentation. So however much AP you have, you can do that. But once you run out of AP, rather than using basic attacks, you could still use abilities and put them on cooldown. And like I said, this is just the least Age of Reckoning looking class, but that's what you guys voted for, so that's what I put.
I usually pick the engineer, but
One thing real
Yeah,
Yeah, Magus, the zealot.
One thing to know real quick, I don't know if you guys had noticed this. So if you go that rune augmentation right, just to kind of showcase this, if you go 1 or you go 2 more to the right, you find Rune of Striking, go down 1. And those are your masteries for all the branches there. So pretty much when
yeah.
you are
So the 3 specializations here, you've got Runelords, which are an offensive support, which is what that icon next to Runelord is. They use 2-handed hammers. They fight. They have some melee abilities and they have some short-ranged abilities, like 50 foot. And that's because Runepriests in lore don't exist. But rune magic does, and rune magic is generally buffs on armor and weapons, right? And so their playstyle interacts that way too. So for example, like their ability makes one of their abilities makes their allies do more damage. It's basically similar to putting a rune onto their weapon. You can throw your hammer as a skill because you have a rune on the hammer that lets you throw it. And most of their skills give buffs to teammates, or they reduce stats from their enemies. For example, like Into the Crucible makes your dot also apply stacks of reduced armor every time it ticks. They also have a mass reduction ability, which is pretty rare in the game, down at the bottom, called Rune of Impact. If you play around with the builder, you'll find that it's very difficult to get everything you want. That's what I've heard from most people that have seen our builders. Runesmith plays kind of similar to the Runelord, except it uses a one-handed hammer instead. They're the actual class that exists in lore. And they just have a lot more defensive-oriented buffs for their team, and are a little bit harder to kill because they don't do as much damage. And then Runepriest is the healer, and it has... Actually, you know what? I'll just let you guys go through it, and then you can ask.
also know that the top left where it says Runescribe, it says required points and points left. This is where you can actually start interacting with it and kind of see what you want. And then you realize that it's not a cookie cutter build like we were talking about earlier. So there's different playstyles in one specific cast and mastery, right? So yeah, go ahead and just review over it, and then if you have any questions on
Maybe
those, yeah.
Renown tactics. Sorry for interrupting. How many renown tactics are we allowed to have?
You'll have 2. You'll get several of them for free, which are not listed here on this builder. That one at the bottom that you see is every class has at least one renown tactic in their mastery builds. But yeah, a lot of the ones that I posted in the the adrenaline system document, you get a lot of those for free, or you earn them in a relatively easy way.
And we have to spend, like old school WoW, we have to spend 5 in each line before we go to the next one.
Yep.
Okay.
I played around with this a lot. There was a point in time that I had 3 per build, and then there was a point in time that I had like 15 depth tree, and yep, we just kind of found that 5 was a good number in order to get those opportunity costs at each level without making it ridiculously deep.
No, I think it's smart because it's something that people already know.
So,
That too.
given the 5-pointed star archetype, what are the 3 for the Runescribe?
Okay, so I have a little icon for each because you did pick one that has 3, which is great. Because a lot of classes only have 2. So the Runelord is an offensive support, the Runepriest is a healer, and the Runesmith is a defensive support.
So bouncing off that, since there's the 5 in Interbellum, like the DPS, tank, healer, offensive support, and defensive support, what is the group size? Is it still 6? And what's the typical group makeup going to look like? Or is that more freeform?
The group size is still 6, and the group composition is freeform. Example I've given to teammates or team members is, say, if you've got a DPS that goes super ham on their gear for defensive stats, sacrifices every form of defensive stats that they possibly can, right? Because they can in our system. If they are removed from guard range, they'll die almost instantly. And Luigi can attest to that because he saw that in previous tests. If you go super offensive, you'll die as soon as you're no longer guarded. However, if you've got a defensive support on your team, you probably can survive even if your tanks are no longer in range. There are certain specializations that use more damage to get their effects, or there's just certain tanks or certain healers that do more damage than others at the cost of some other stuff. And at that point, having a offensive support rather than a second DPS is probably more beneficial to your group because more people of your group are actually doing damage. So the whole system is designed to where getting a constant group composition of like you need 2 tanks, one offensive support, 2 DPS, and a healer or whatever, it shouldn't happen. And if it does, that's what the seasonal changes are for, so we can fix it.
How often are going to be your seasonal changes?
Right now, the time frame is looking at 4 months. That might change.
Every 4 months?
That's the really rough idea of it, yes.
Thank you.
So, since we're on the topic here about defensive support and all this kind of thing, quick question. In the 2 previous versions, Age and Return of Reckoning, crowd control, it has been used, but it was never picked by players. It was more beneficial. It was preferred not to have someone who specializes on crowd control and buffs or debuffs, but to just go for pure damage and just kill before you're killed. So with the changes you guys are doing on the way the crowd control is working, mass, and a lot of the other things, would a class that specializes on hard CC would be useful, or is just going to be now forget it, better to have a DPS in our team on this new system?
Yes, it will. Tanks generally have access to a lot of CCs. There are a couple of non-tank specializations that have a lot of CC for that purpose. One of the primary reasons that we split up the CC into, we split up the hard CCs into 3 categories rather than 2, was to allow those other CCs to be more useful. Because on Return of Reckoning and Age of Reckoning, for example, if you knock someone down, you can't silence them. So a lot of times those other CCs weren't used just because there's only 2 immunity groups. So yes, we expect CC to be more impactful when used appropriately than it is before. But you still have ways of not being CC because no one likes to not have full control of their character forever.
Yeah, if I remember, there's also going to be a cooldown on slow, right?
Yes, there is a CC immunity on Ensnared.
Yeah, okay, thank you. So, since everybody's a bit quiet, I suppose they're looking at the skills, but just a general question. You mentioned at some point on the public releases, it's going to be 72 different ways to play the game. That means 72 ways, different ways to play the game, like for all 24 classes, the 72 ways, or
24
one
times
class
3
can
is 72.
Right, okay.
Yeah, that's where that number came from.
Okay.
We don't believe in mirroring. So the Zealot does not look like this. Nothing looks like this. This style of gameplay, this cooldown management augmentation system is unique to the Runescribe.
Sorry, because
However-
I'm not really familiar with the Zealot, so I can understand this. But you're telling me that the engineer gameplay will have nothing to do with the Magus gameplay?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because like right now, the way it is on the 2 previous versions, they're almost identical. Just have different damage and a couple of
Yeah.
different spells.
It's called quasi mirrors. That's how
Yeah.
Mythic built their system, and Return of Reckoning went with it. We're not doing that. There's only a couple of aspects of things that we mirrored just because they needed to be. A good example is like the Knights Aura system. We couldn't have one side have the Aura system and the other side not. So there's a couple like sub mechanics that are mirrored, because I consider that a sub mechanic. But like the gameplay loop for classes is different. So like I said, the Zealot does not look like this. The Magus does not look like the Engineer in terms of how it plays. Like they're different. We do not believe in mirrors as much as we can get away with.
Okay.
I've got a question. With I know this is way down the line, and it's probably retarded for me to even ask this, but in the game, you always hear the Runepriest say for a Garungi, for Valea, and all that. So whichever spec that they pick, are you going to have that EP, that role play for the character to only say those things?
No.
Looking down the line.
For especially in this example, because if you notice, each one of these specs uses all 3. If you really delve into it, you'll realize that each one like slightly favors one. So you're right about that. They do have like slight favoritism, but they each do use all 3 of those ancestors that were pulled straight from lore. I actually could have pulled more, but having more than 3 cooldown categories is too complicated. So for the player, so we went with 3, and we went with the 3 most revered ancestor dwarves.
Is this also going to apply to all of the classes?
In what way?
So, for instance, am I going to be able to have a Slaaneshi Chosen, a Khorne Chosen, and all of that, and then
Yes.
with BOs, with
I
correction
actually-
with orcs, and how are you going to do that?
So in what is it? Does anybody remember which thread I posted that in?
I can go look for it. I know what you're talking about. It's the one with the Nurgle, Khorne, and Slaaneshi for Chosen.
Yeah.
Yep.
I found it. It's an obtaining combat gear.
Where was it at? And I'll go find it myself.
Oh, I'm gonna post it. Here you go.
All right, thank you.
So yes, we are, as much as possible, we have pulled in as much lore as we possibly can fit into the game without breaking. So yes, I posted that as response to, because so many people have asked me about, can they play Khorne Chosen? It is probably one of the highest questions I have received, and I was like, I got tired of saying it, so I just clipped out a little piece of the builder and posted it, right? Yes, the Chaos units will not just be the Raven host. All 4 Chaos units will have a spec that is specialized towards one Chaos God, with each Chaos God being represented 3 times.
Okay, with chaos being like that, how are elves and all aura characters and orcs going to be handled?
So those particular races have larger unit rosters. So for example, let me open up my builder so I get these names right. So for example, what you guys know to be the Swordmaster, since you said High Elves. The Swordmaster for Interbellum, the default name is called the Apprentice of the White Tower. And the 3 specializations for the Apprentice of the White Tower is a High Elf Commander, a High Elf Swordmaster, and a High Elf Lore Master. So we have pulled in the extra unit types to fill out our specializations where possible.
Thank you.
I have a question about something a little bit different. Something that a lot of people have kind of wanted me to ask. Warhammer, a big component of it is mods and add-ons. Will add-ons and mods that work on Return of Reckoning work on Interbellum, or will they have to be rewritten or created from scratch?
Any add-on that functions solely by interacting with the client will be fine. I know that Return of Reckoning has some specific add-ons that are just like gets data from their server. Those won't work. I don't remember which ones those are called. I think most of them are related to like their campaign. But things like enemy buffhead, enemy buffhead, user interface stuff, that all should work. You will need to adjust your ability IDs, because obviously these skills are going to be different, right? So Fireball might not be the same ID as Fireball on our server. So not that you would really care about tracking Fireball. But we plan on, at least on the add-ons that we know to be most used, we plan on distributing those with the add-ons already adjusted for that, like ID swap, with the base client that we send out. In addition, certain things related to IDs are simpler. For example, every single ability that applies disarm in the game applies a buff called disarm. It's not like a different icon with a different ability ID. They all say the ability ID for disarmed is 1005. Even if I have got an ability ID from 9063 that applies it still applies ability buff 1005. So it'll be easier to set that stuff up if you're caring about that, because a lot of these things are put on the same thing, just like our buff debuff stat stages. Same thing. Everything will be reduced strength, enhanced strength. So it becomes a little bit easier to set up, and also saves us a lot on performance.
So I'll ask something again since it's a little bit quiet right now. Uh, will you have scenarios, battlegrounds ready for the launch of your server? And like, are we
Yes.
going to expect the same basic maps and rule sets? Northern Watch and
Yes. No.
server set? Okay.
Yes, we will have scenarios. Yes, you can expect a lot of the. You'll expect the maps. The design for the ones that suck will be changed.
Sorry,
Because
what
some
will
of
be
them objectively
changed?
suck. Scenarios, certain scenarios that objectively suck, will be
Uh,
changed.
are you gonna have scenarios with which you can win by like doing objectives, or all of them gonna be, you know, big fight in the middle, get one flag, move to the next flag again, a big mosh pit, and then again a mosh pit, or they're gonna be more tactical scenarios as well?
Most scenarios will be objective based. We will have some scenarios that are literally just team deathmatch or elimination. But the majority of scenarios are going to be objective based, and the value of kills from what you're knowing will be diminished because getting the objective means that you are killing people for the objective. That is a
Okay.
general overarching concept of Interbellum, is outside of a handful of places where kills are the reason you're there. Kills
No,
are a necessary component of obtaining objective.
no, because like in Age of Reckoning, half the scenarios, or well, half, it's from the top of my head, you had to control objectives, so the people playing, the groups, were split in this objective, that one, and if for any reason you were overpowered from the other team that had, better geared players, and you were losing the fight game, you could sneak around, get the objective, and still win the scenario. But on ROR lately, they've changed everything into Zergfest and grabbing one flag to the next, so you're forced to stay there. And if you're overpowered, people just stop playing. And because I love scenarios, that's why I'm asking is going to be tactical ones, because that style just makes people want to AFK. So
There's
All
also
right,
the
I'll
mechanic.
give you. Go ahead.
Sorry for interrupting, but just to piggyback off of Fixer, there's also the mechanic in ROR for where it's control middle and that's it. So
Yes. So when we were doing phase 2 testing, I was actually adjusting some scenarios because I knew that certain things. So, for example, on Northern Watch, everyone knows on Northern Watch that the flag up at the top of the mountain is the only flag that matters, right? Because it provides twice as much points as the uh, other two nodes for some reason. Uh, Very simple fix of Northern Watch is to just make all the flags be the same value, so holding 2 is more valuable than holding 1, no matter what. There's also, I think later we actually even added a catch-up mechanic to where if you were a certain number of points behind, if you owned 2 flags, you would gain more points than normal. So certain scenarios like that are fixed by just adjusting the rule set they already have a little bit. And then other scenarios are just complete crap, and would need to be redesigned entirely.
yeah, but my bottom line is we will have tactical scenarios. We're gonna have like deathmatch kill scenarios for those that like those. That's the, let's say, the two
Yes, we
categories.
will have tactical scenarios.
That's what I want to know, basically.
Yeah. Put it this way: my favorite battleground in World of Warcraft is Arathi Basin.
Amen.
It's the best one. So for scenarios, are there going to be, I don't know if you're familiar with Return of Reckoning. At one point, it was just you queue up, 6-man solo, you go into the same pool. Eventually, they created a solo scenario that only solo players can queue into. Do you have an idea of what you plan on doing in regards to, the solo v pre-made in Battlegrounds?
The first time I saw that solo ranked was on your stream while I was doing some other stuff. And the first thing I noticed was that for some reason they were allowing order players to fight alongside Destro players, and I puked. Because that is a gross thing of lore. They had I think it was an Ironbreaker fighting alongside a Blackguard or something. But so in terms of ranked, solo ranked will probably not exist for a long time because we want people to group. It's not saying that I'm ignoring solo. We have designed certain aspects of gameplay for solo players, but like the primary function of an MMO is to get people to play with other people. That's so there probably won't be a solo ranked. In addition to what some other people on the team have said, that solo ranked actually pulls apart grouped ranked PvP oftentimes, and not just in Return of Reckoning either. Happens in like WoW private servers. It happens anywhere that there's not just hundreds of thousands of people queuing up for PvP. So as long as we aren't this huge number project, I highly doubt we'll ever do solo ranked. Just because. And
Yeah,
then we also go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I was just gonna say. So I understand that there's also a separate queue that isn't a ranked. It's just solo players queuing up, and it's just to avoid pre-made groups going in. So it's the only solo players, and it's less competitive, but it's just more of a pickup group type of scenario.
That has a possibility of being implemented, yes.
So you encourage solo play and you encourage pug play. What protections do you have for both versus the the pre-made and the Zerg?
Zerg is in design. Pre-made is a little bit harder to answer right now.
Okay.
Well, I
I'm
guess.
not sure I have a good answer for it yet.
Well, I guess if like the problem with the pre-made is you get like just people like rank over 80 fighting rank 50 guys. So now it's gonna be more balanced. If we get the max gear sooner, even if it's not the best stats, it's gonna be a little bit more
That's true.
equal fear.
That was going to be. Sorry, I'm sorry.
It's okay. When we had a forum 2 years ago, I remember writing something there, but it's not been in my mind for a little bit because I haven't had to worry about it. We wrote something related to it. I think it was something related to the queue. I don't remember it. I know we once discussed it. It's been a while because it's not what I've actively been working on for the past bit.
Well, just a suggestion on the table kind of thing. Since we're talking about scenarios, and scenarios is my favorite thing in this game for myself. If there's going to be a pack solo scenario, I'm not talking about ranked. I don't like ranked myself, whether it's group or not, but the casual stuff. You have to look at the mechanism where you can check if there's 6 people queuing at the same time from the same guild, the same alliance. So they're trying to bypass the solo mechanism and things like that. Because over the last years we've been playing on other servers, that's been a problem. So keep that in mind when you're designing your system, if there's something you can put in there. Because it has created, because besides the gameplay, we have to look, or you have to look at your designers here, how that affects the psychology of the player. Because when somebody comes into play, whether it's RVR, that is scenario, and he's playing alone, and he's queues up on a solo scenario, all right? I'm really stickler about the definitions here. Pug solo scenario, and he ends up playing against the same 6 people, which it can happen, other people play solo, but then he says, okay, hold on a second, this is 6 people from the same guild. We have a problem there. So keep that in mind if there's something can be done, because I don't know if program-wise something can be done with that.
To be
Designing
honest,
against
go for it.
Designing against stuff. Well, just talk, John. Don't type. But designing against bad actors is something that we have to keep track of. That's something I've stated in public, just but not in like any particular area. That you always have to design things to keep. If someone is doing a behavior you don't like, you need to change the design. Because trying to use moderation is not a good idea. So while I don't have an answer to that right now, because I don't have the stuff around me about the queuing system that I had 2 years ago.
I don't expect an answer. I'm just putting it
No,
on
I
the
know.
table for your information in future design to have that, like, on the back of your head when you're designing something. Because from the years I've been streaming and people coming to my stream and playing, we've seen a lot of aggravation for that. I mean, there's other topics and other areas that create aggravation to the player base regarding classes and class versus class and some other skills and mechanisms. But since we're talking about scenarios, I thought it would be nice to put that on the table.
Yep.
If I may
But-
weigh in on that. Yeah, go ahead, John.
Oh, cheers. Yeah, so I think it's a double-edged sword, isn't it, with regards to finding that balance for solo players. I think one of the reasons why often you'd queue for the pug scenario and you'd end up against 3-4 people from the same guild is ultimately it stems from one of two things. It's usually rewards and incentives, and sometimes the player base. I mean, if you're playing quite late night and there's not many people queuing, and most people tend to queue, for the pug scenario, especially if you're not grouped up, you're going to have fewer pops as a group. So obviously that's one thing. I mean, if it's a low population, it's going to be hard to alleviate that. But the other point is if you incentivize people not doing that, not disbanding their groups, actually going out and trying to fight other groups, then that should have a knock-on effect on that. That's the hope anyway. But yeah, definitely it's something that we're aware of. I've seen it firsthand as well. It's not enjoyable. But yeah, if you incentivize groups to not do that, to not disband as a full 6-man and all queue up for the same bloody scenario, it should have a knock-on effect. Left seat.
I mean,
Sorry, that you mentioned this. Just a question, because you are taking this, let's say, old game, and you're redesigning it. You're giving it a fresh air. You're bringing more modern aspects, builds, and mechanisms. And since we're talking about scenarios, are you gonna, by any chance, create a, how can I put this? Let's say, group finder. Like, I want to play Northern Watch. I'm a tank. Click, and then it will find, I don't know, a healer and 2 DPS and say, okay, there's a group now, you can queue. Or, you have to go the old-fashioned way and find your group, invite everybody, and then as the group leader, queue.
That's actually a really good point. It's something we spoke about recently, wasn't it, Rema? About kind of modifying the in-game tool, which isn't really used. I mean, the last time I used it was if you were solo and you wanted to join an open warband. That's pretty much the only time I ever used it. It's definitely something that we've spoken about, because that would be nice, because if you can find people with a similar goal, that should go a long way to getting people playing in a group anyway. But
Yeah,
I love playing with groups, but
to the listing of the group, not just have I'm doing PQs or whatever. Like,
yeah.
have a box where you can type exactly what you're doing and what you need for it, and then people can join.
Yeah, because a lot of people kind of find it hard to stay, let's say, on /4/5 channel and say, hey, looking for the DPS, looking for the tank, looking for this 4 scenarios, and again and again. It's kind of like, a way a little bit more automatic finding things would be nice.
Yeah, but
automatic probably isn't in the cards, but yeah, like you can modify the UI.
Sorry, yeah.
Say that again, Luigi.
I said the whole point is communicating with other people. That's the whole point of a MMO. I mean, that's why the first World of Warcraft was so good. After that, they just went for automatic shit, I mean, that's the truth. I mean, the game is supposed to be hard. Like, even if you get ganked in a scenario, like, what are you gonna do? You're gonna find a few friends, and you're gonna try to do better. That's it. That's in my opinion, but
yeah, again, probably going automatic is not a good idea. But
I mean,
improving
you're gonna
the
find some
existing tool.
friends, and let's say you get beat in a scenario. Well, you can just do RVR and wait for the next day, or you can maybe find a few friends and get a better build up. I mean, a better build, and try to beat them. The thing is, you gotta be in the how can I say it, in the equal plane. I mean, if everybody's ranked 80 and over, and the other group is rank 50, forget it. But if we're all in the same plane, there's always a chance to win.
That's
You
good.
I mean, you just gotta coordinate your stuff. I mean, you gotta find people. That's what I had the most fun, is getting beat up, and after that, talking to the guys like around me, teaming up, and beating a shaman. You know what I
Well,
mean?
yeah, I hear you, and I like to
Yeah.
hear how you see things and how you think about things, because that's going to spill out to open RVR and other areas, and the whole incentive about people.
Oh yeah, but
And
it's such a big
I'm really
game.
hoping that the incentives and the systems you're going to implement is going to actually make people want to do this, and not just say what
Yeah, I get it.
we see a lot of times where people say, yeah, okay, they don't know how to play, okay, they're shit, they're this, they're that, and just leave it. I hope people are going to be more involved and actually communicate, because a lot of times you go into scenarios in many games, from New World to Warhammer to, I don't know, Lost Ark, whatever, and you tell people like, okay, let's group up, let's go there, and you get ignored. Let's hope that people actually gonna come into this game with a little bit better mentality.
You're going to be very disappointed if you're expecting that, because that's just not how players are in any game.
Yeah,
It's
I was
very
just gonna
true.
say that.
I know.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that the mentality compared to the past and now is just completely different between the players themselves.
Be a man.
So yeah, but like you said, Louis, you said like if I fail in a scenario, I fail in a scenario. Okay, tomorrow, next day, we'll try again. And this is a fairly, yeah, I'm gonna say it like this, old mentality. If you look at a lot of the younger, newer players, they all have this mentality where I don't have time for this. Everything has to be fast, quick leveling, quick power ups, quick this, quick that. If the game can play itself, yes, please. And it's yeah, but it's so weird. The concept for me is so weird. Like, you're playing a game to relax, to wind down, communicate with friends, make
Yeah.
friends, and then what they want is everything needs to be automated.
Like
Why
a
are
job.
you even, yeah? Why are you even playing a game then? It's like,
brother, that's what they have.
Yeah.
That's all they know. They don't know, and they don't have and haven't had what we have. So, I mean, that's a failure on the gaming industry.
True. But to get back on Interbellum, I have a question about some of the problems some of the classes have. I want to ask if you have solved some of these issues, or if you had some workarounds along these issues. So I'm just going to tell them all together. Yeah. So we have problems with mobility, engineer, and magus with the turrets. I don't know if they're still going to have them or not on your system, or if we've solved a lot of the problems with the pools. Because like on the previous versions, Age and Return of Reckoning, all the pools are broken. I'm not talking about how frustrating it may be on players. I'm talking about the actual skills that are broken. Have you solved that problem, or we still expect things to go through walls, floors, ceilings, getting stuck on rails, and things like that?
Hitting through walls.
The first question related to engineer turret mobility thingy. First, they do have turrets, sort of. They're called deployables, because they're not all turrets.
Yay!
One of the specs does not even have a turret, so that lets you know that their primary mechanic is not related to their pet. And there are methods for them that they don't necessarily have to be near their pet at all points in time in order to gain benefits. Same with the Magus, they work that different ways, but there is, you are not stuck in one position in order to gain, 40% power is what it is on Return of Reckoning?
No,
20
20
now?
20 now.
Well, whatever. Anyways, that's not a thing. That whole
Okay.
mechanic is gone, and you don't need it. Now, there is benefits to standing, at least for rifleman spec, there's a benefit for standing near your pet. But it's not a requirement. It's more of like a resource management thing. You can still be away from your pet as long as you don't need that resource management, which means there's good windows of time that you don't have to be near it.
Or the
Same with the Magus.
Are the pets going to share health with the summoner?
By share health, do you mean if I hit the pet, I hit the summoner too?
No. Yes and no. More along the lines of, are the pets just going to be an easy 2-shot, and or for some melee healer to feed off of? Or
Pets will have defensive stats. They will not be two-shottable.
Okay.
In our previous testing, we actually had a stack of a buff on it that basically made them ridiculously hard to kill until you hit them like 5 or 6 times. They basically had like a huge amount of defensive stats that was like reduced every time you hit them. We've changed that, but like we have adjusted that in the past, and we will. Yeah.
Okay.
I just want to elaborate a bit on orthogonal. Sorry, I'm always going to say your surname. I'm sorry, your name wrong.
Yeah, you're good, brother.
Elaborate a bit on the turrets. What we mean is, in Return of Reckoning, for example, if a healing dog goes and hits a pet of the engineer or a warrior priest, the pet of a magus, he will heal the entire group because he has like 0 armor, 0 everything. And, you know, it's a huge disadvantage to deploy it because he can heal everything instantly because he's dealing like 3k damage and times 150 on healing. But I think that's the question.
Circumstances.
Yeah,
under most circumstances. Well, sorry, under default circumstances, not assuming any other modifications that you might use to your pet, your turret is going to have at least as much defense as you, probably more, but it will have at least as much defense as you.
Mobile pets?
Yes.
That's.
It's still going to exist in some form, so it is worth saying because we do want counterplay to exist, and as a melee healer anyway, you're going to be in the fray a lot more anyway. So it's not to say that if you were to life tap off a pet or a deployable, that the heals would be completely inconsequential. It's just that, like you said, Live Fixer, it's not going to be a case of life tapping everyone back to 100% because of a pet
because that's an issue. So just checking.
Absolutely.
Like I said, the minimum defenses they will have is the same as you. So if you have no defenses and they go and hit your pet and you haven't done anything to modify your pet, then they'll hit the pet the same as they were hitting you. And then that's on you for that.
Yeah, okay. That's better than what we have.
Like I said, there are some mechanics that you can apply at the cost of some other things, because everything is opportunity cost, to make your pets harder to kill. Also, certain types of pets, by their nature of what they do, will have higher defenses than what you would have.
I got a question about the Knight and Chosen. I don't remember, but does the aura is passive, or it was something you would proc and wait for another one?
So in the system you tested,
Yeah,
and I was they have a very powerful short duration effect plus an infinite pass, like an infinite reduced effect, right? We have gone a step further with that, because rather than having it where you could only have 3 auras per unit, we've instead made it a really powerful short duration effect and a weaker 1-minute duration effect, and you can use as many auras as you can generate the resource that the aura burns, which will average out to 3. But if you're playing well or not getting hit, then you can potentially use 4 in a minute rather than 3. So yes, the aura system is still off the GCD, powerful short duration effects with some weaker long duration effects. It's just the method that you generate them now will be more involved rather than just cooldowns. They don't have cooldowns anymore either.
well, yeah. And this is a big question, but could you do like a small rundown of all the classes, but quickly? Like the Knight has a offensive. It's an offensive tank, defensive tank, and support tank.
Okay, yeah, give me a
just
second.
Thank you, Luigi.
Just a quick, don't go in depth. Just okay.
Just talk for like
But like, could
Dwarven
you
right
break
here,
it down
aren't you?
for all of your archetypes?
We've completely removed the two-handed warrior priest playstyle.
Thanks.
That's okay.
Shh, no, we haven't. Shut up.
Dual hammers, right?
Let's see. Open up. Actually, there was a time on our testing to do that because I broke dual wielding. So I back to dual wield.
Oh, you might. Yeah.
Let's see.
Dual
So,
hammers.
just going from left to right, I guess. Bright Wizard, Pyromancer, DPS, Arsonist, DPS, Battle Wizard, offensive support, Squire, Captain, tank, Order of Glinting Steel, two-handed tank, Knight of the Blazing Sun, two-handed offensive support, Swordsman, Witch Hunter, DPS, Free Company, Militia, DPS, Outrider, offensive support, Warrior Priest, Order of the Silver Hammer, melee healer, Order of the Anvil and Torch, ranged defensive support, Order of the Cleansing Flame, offensive or melee DPS, Dwarf Warrior, Ironbreaker, Sword and Board Tank, Hammerer, DPS, melee, Longbeard, two-handed tank, Engineer, Rifleman spec, DPS, Grenadier spec, DPS, Tinkerer, tank, Oathbreaker, Skaven Slayer, DPS, Exiled, tank, Giant Slayer, DPS, Runescribe, Runelord, offensive DPS or offensive support, Runepriest, healer, Runesmith, defensive support, Archmage, Adept of Gyron, probably mispronounced that, healer, Adept of Azir, offensive support, Adept of Heish, healer, Apprentice of the White Tower, Commander, tank, Swordmaster, melee DPS, Loremaster, defensive support, White Lion, Axeman, DPS, no pet, Guardsman, tank with a pet, Hunter, DPS with a pet, High Elven Archer, Shadow Warrior, DPS, Lothern Sea Guard, offensive support, Shadow Walker, DPS, Chosen, Nurgle, tank, Khorne, DPS, Zeech, defensive support, Marauder, Khorne, DPS, Nurgle, offensive support, Slaaneshi, tank, Zeech, Zealot, Zeech, healer, Slaaneshi, defensive support, Khorne, DPS, Magus, Doomweaver, which is Slaaneshi, is DPS, Soulflayer, which is Nurgle, is DPS, Cataclysm, which is Zeech, is defensive support. Then we go to Greenskins, Black Orc, not an official name, tank, Black Orc, not an official name, DPS, Black
Thanks,
Orc,
guys.
not an official name,
What spec was that one
offensive
again?
support. Yeah, the
Thanks,
names that
guys.
haven't gone through Lord Master, you know.
So you've given one spec 3 rolls, Ram.
They have them, they just don't have names that I can say. So then we've got what used to be the Choppa, it's now called the Boys. Their specs are Biggin, DPS, Error Boy, DPS, or sorry, offensive support, Shaman, DPS.
Uh-huh.
What used to be Squig Herder is now Goblin. Goblin Squig Herder is a offensive support. A Goblin Archer is a DPS, and a Goblin Squig Rider is a tank. What used to be a Goblin Shaman is now called Night Goblins. You have the Shaman, which is a offensive support, a Stalker, which is a DPS, and we haven't actually built the third specialization for that one yet. Then you have Dark Elves. So you've got the I mean, I guess I can say this, not the official term, the orphan, but that's just because they're all orphans for this particular class. The Blackguard is a Rain. Where did I put that? Why am I missing it? Blackguard is a offensive support? No. Blackguard is a defensive support. The Tower Master is a tank. The Executioner is an offensive support. The Bleak Sword, that name is probably not going to stay, which is what the Disciple of Cain is, has a Cainite Assassin, which is a DPS, a Corsair, which is a offensive support, and a Disciple of Cain, which is a healer. Then you have the Witch Elf, which I need to pull that up because it's not in this document. It's in another one. That on the Discord.
According to lore, isn't a witch elf a disciple of Cain?
In the lore, Witch Elf plays more like a Choppa, for what you know. But so the Witch Elf, which I haven't named the the Witch Elf is now a cult of Cain. Haven't fully named it. The Witch Elf is a DPS. The Death Hag is an offensive support, and the Hag Queen is a defensive support. And then Sorcerer for Dark Elf is the Dominator of Ulgu is a DPS. A Dominator of Gur is an offensive support, and the Dominator of Shaish, Lord of Death Magic, is a healer.
Hey, just a heads up real quick. The witch elf, I don't know if you want a abbreviated cock on that. So
Oh no, like that's not a name that's gonna stay. It's some of that stuff hasn't gone through the lore master, right? So
no, I got
basically witch elves are part of the cult of Cain.
Yeah, I just thought it was funny
that COK is yeah. I haven't had put a name there. I just put their cultist of Cain and went on with my life because lore master is currently like busy, basically. Doesn't have time. While I work with the lore and I use it as much as possible, I really suck at naming things. So I just sometimes put placeholders until you can get around to it.
I got you, brother. I got you, man.
But yeah, there's your 24 class rundown, making me talk for 4 minutes.
Yeah, great. So now we have about another 25 questions. Thanks.
Yeah, each.
I'm sure.
Thanks, Rama.
But I still want an answer about the pools, though. Have you done anything to fix the problems there, or?
Yes, because everyone kept asking me multiple questions.
Yes.
No, I don't think so. It's something that's in my mind, but until I actually start trying to pull people through walls and stuff like that, I can't answer the question.
Okay, I can give you some specific locations if you want that actually need to test.
I don't know. Lefty, do you want me to talk about that?
But anyways, doesn't matter.
Excuse me,
You're
what?
gonna see it in the future. It's okay.
What did you ask about?
The changing stuff related to meshes and crap. Or should I just leave that alone for now?
I think it's better to just wait with that, to be fair.
Right. So then the answer is I may not talk about it yet.
Okay. Can I ask a question about the classes you mentioned?
It's related to pools, and for me to answer that, it would go into that stuff that you were talking about, but that's fine.
Right. Well, in regards to pools, I think the only thing I can mention there is that we're likely to use a completely different line of sight mechanic than Return of Reckoning. Like, it's a new EMU. Okay. So, the old issues are not necessarily present. There might be new catastrophic ones that need to be sorted over time, but yeah, like it's gonna be hard to say without seeing the new line of sight in action in the first place. Yeah,
I'm asking because, I play an engineer. Everybody knows this is my favorite class. So the pooling mechanism it's a nice thing to have in a lot of situations, but it's broken. It creates frustration both to the player using it and the player receiving the pool. A lot of the times, instead of getting pulled, you jump up and down, you pull through walls. There's 1,000 different problems there. Just wondering if that is something that, it was fixed. But if you can't talk about it yet, that's fine. At least I know it's on your list of things to look at. Okay, I'm cool with that.
Yes, as Ramos said, like it's gonna need to be iterated on. Like you test it. If it doesn't work, you change something and see how it works after, etc. And
I
in the
have
end,
a
hopefully it's
question.
fixed.
Yeah. I have a question because you just mentioned something about the classes. Can I ask a question about the different classifications you just did for the classes, or?
Yeah, go for it. You can ask whatever you want.
You said white. I don't remember the name, so.
That's okay. I
White
went through it pretty
Lion.
quick.
Yeah, White Lion tank, Marauder tank, Engineer Tinkerer tank.
Mhm.
Are they what we would consider tanky builds, like a DPS, but it has high defenses, so it doesn't die very quickly or instantly? Or they're actually tanks, like a Chosen, where they have guard and they can protect and they can buff?
A tank does not necessarily mean that you have guard. I will give you that. Any class that I said that would normally have guard, at least one of their tank specializations has guard. There are some other methods that we are employing to create other aspects of tank. A good example, since you are an engineer, I'll give you this. If you look on that builder I gave you towards Runepriest, and you look at on Runesmith, you look at the top right, the basically A B C D H D H master rune, where it says that people within a certain space of master rune have cover.
Yes.
The engineer tinkerer is all about increasing the effectiveness of people in an increasing the defenses of a people in an area, because they use deployables, right? So they don't have guard, but they have some other ways to get people to hit them, in addition to some effects that while you are standing near them or standing near their deployables, you are harder to kill. So there are non-standard tanks.
Yeah,
What we call
I
them
get you.
internally.
That's a design I had for a tank engineer in papers, and a healing one. Okay, cool. I know what you mean. I know how that works. Okay.
Yeah.
So instead of running typical 2-2-2, now you could do one actual tank, one engineer tank, and use him as the off tank for the cover. Okay, I got you. I see where you went with.
Yes.
Yeah, I've actually designed a similar build for engineer to have like 2 more trees of specs. One that's like tank in this way using turrets, and one that's a healer. So I think I know where that's going. So we'll see it when it's ready. Good, good.
So
exciting news. Exciting news.
Zone control tank. It's a thing that exists in a large number of other games, some of which are even active games. So, for example, Overwatch. Overwatch has zone control oriented tanks.
So do you guys have a plan in place for, faction imbalance? So if, let's say, Destruction has 500 people online, Order has 200, is there something to encourage people to fight in the lakes against greater numbers, like Warhammer Return of Reckoning, Age of Reckoning had against all odds? Is there something like that?
Yes, but it's not fully built out yet. I will say that a lot of your I'm going to say income, just because I don't want to go through everything that is considered what you gain for playing. A lot of your income is based off of like your influence towards the campaign at the time. And with only 200 people to share that influence versus 500, you will obtain more rewards naturally, even without me giving you a buff called AAO. There are also some other aspects of design that hasn't been fully gone through yet, because we don't have 200 people running around to test these things on what we might need. But some ideas that I touched on the Q&A, stuff like giving small combat benefits to people that are outnumbered in certain areas, so that they can hit and run better, to plunk away at those numbers. I will say, because I've seen this a lot in chat, we're not hard restricting people from logging in if one side is more numbered than the other. That especially at some of the lower values that I've seen people being like, oh, if one side's at 52%, you should hard lock people from logging in. We're not doing that, because that's bad. it would take me like 20 minutes to explain how bad that actually is, but basically people not being able to log in to play is a really bad situation to be in if it happens to you, even if you aren't one of the problem people, right? I don't have much more to offer on that at this point, just because it hasn't been fully fleshed out.
I have a question with the lore aspect, or not really the lore aspect, but from as much as you're pushing on it. With the account that we hold, are we gonna have Order and Destro on the same account, or do we have to have
Yes.
2 accounts? Okay.
You do not have to have 2 accounts.
2 accounts.
You do not. You do not have to have
Okay.
2 accounts.
But just to come back a little bit about the area and the benefits you just mentioned. If I remember in one of the other public releases, you said, or somebody said anyways, that a map, I don't know if that means a campaign, like all the maps from tier 1 to tier 4, only one will be open, and if and when a lot of people, or a lot, whatever the limit is, of people log in, then another zone will open. Was
Correct.
that like
That-
a reference to one map, like Dragon Wake, until we get more people, or the Elf campaign until we get more people?
That was a reference to one map, as in like Dragon Lake. So, I can't go much
So-
more into that because I've already brushed up against the
No,
line on that
that's-
RBR thing.
Okay, I'm just wondering because, like, at the current game that I play, anyways, if a map stays on more than 2 hours, everybody gets haywire and crazy. So I'm just checking, if, you know, it's gonna be
So
some system.
I will say that the design, it's designed that there can't be a stalemate.
Okay.
A map will always change after a certain amount of time, as long as literally anyone is doing anything in the zone.
Okay.
I can't explain how that works, but
No,
there
that's
is.
all right.
And when I say map or zone, I just mean like an individual zone, like Dragon Lake or Iate
Right, okay.
or Chaos Wastes.
Just checking, you know, there's because there's a lot of public releases, but you know, the mind generates a lot of questions and details which are not clear for apparent reasons, but we still have to
That is
ask
what
some
this
of
is
those
about.
questions.
Primary reason this is here.
So this is something a little bit different, but if you're aware, Return of Reckoning has Twitch drops, and you know there's people who are streaming Return of Reckoning, like myself, Fixer, other people, and you know who do it. They stream under the Warhammer Online Age of Reckoning Twitch category, and this is something that's been asked of me as well. If there's going to be any issues streaming Interbellum with Return of Reckoning existing, and given that they have drops, there's some nuance with who can have drops and who can't, and who can stream Warhammer and who can't. Do you know anything about that?
I know enough to say that there shouldn't be any particular reason that you can't stream. In terms of Twitch, you are streaming Warhammer Online, Age of Reckoning. That's what the client is called. You're just connecting to the Interbellum server. They can't really. It's nothing. It's Age of Reckoning Warhammer. You're saying you're playing. You are stating what you are playing, and what you are playing is correct. In terms of Twitch drops, I think I have heard some things in relation to Twitch drops. I don't particularly want to repeat them in terms of how Return of Reckoning got their Twitch drops. I can say that it has never been a concern of mine to obtain them. And I don't think anyone else on the team, I could be wrong, but I don't think anyone else on the team has really thought about Twitch drops themselves. But I can say with a pretty high certainty that you can stream it, yes, with no issue.
With
Absolute
that-
quiet.
Yeah. With
No,
that,
I have
no.
questions. I'm just trying to see if anybody's gonna continue on this one or not.
Yeah. That is a good source of new player, you know, getting your stuff out there to new players.
Yes,
The whole
which is
Twitch
why
drops.
I mean, so the general concept on Twitch drops, at least from what I know, not a huge person that watches streams or deals with them.
Wow.
But yeah,
Offended.
you know what? Be happy that I even like log into yours while I'm working sometimes, just for the music most of the time.
Wow.
And but so a concept which goes in, like a design concept for Interbellum, is that you should earn everything in game. So that's also one of the reasons why I can very quickly say no to people when they ask about stuff like microtransactions and stuff. That same concept for me has also attributed towards Twitch drops. That's why I haven't paid attention to them. And in that particular case, I can only answer from myself that I have not looked into that. I don't know if anyone else on the team has. I would actually view that personally. I would view that more as the like community manager, like community relations department than the design department. If at any point in time, like leads from the Interbellum say, "Hey, we actually can do Twitch drops, and this is how we're going to do them. Can you design some method of rewarding people in game?" That's when I get involved.
One of the big reasons why I got interested in the game is that I came across that was the goggles. Goggles have always been a real big thing for a lot of people, especially the people that I play with. So with that's a completely ROR designed item. Now, with what y'all are doing, if I'm understanding, y'all have some things that y'all have created from the ground up yourselves, i.e. art and everything like that. Are there any things cosmetic wise, but also gameplay wise that y'all have instituted yourself that y'all are bringing in?
Art?
Well, more like armor sets, weapons, stuff
Oh,
like
that's
that.
art to me, unless you're talking about the gear. So the gear is combat gear is one thing. Well, that's changed a lot, which you can see in the public releases. In terms of art assets, that is the art team. And I mean, what they have let me release is only what's in preview outdated. I currently don't have any art assets that I am allowed to release to the public.
Okay.
Outside of what is in #preview-outdated.
My next question is the ROR team. They instituted their own set design and their own weapons and so on and so forth that weren't part of the original game. And as of now, they are, they're almost better than actual Sov in the game. So, do y'all plan on doing something like that at all, or do y'all see Sov, see Tyrant or Warforged as the true in-game gear?
By that, do you mean visually or do you mean combat?
Combat.
In terms of combat, there are actually two different types of gear in the game. Very specifically, when I wrote obtaining combat gear as the public release, I meant combat gear. So all combat gear looks exactly the same. You get appearance gear rewarded through other methods to change the appearance of your game. So you have to use the transmog system in order to get different appearances. Every single piece of combat stat gear will look the same.
Since we're on the gear, generally speaking, will there be sets? What I mean is, I don't know, headpiece, chest piece, back. Those three items give you plus that much, mass, plus that much strength.
Not at launch.
Set bonuses, not a launch.
It is not something that we have decided. It is not something that we have decided to completely remove from the game. We are just not doing it at launch.
There's one thing I'm interested. Are you gonna have? You said you don't have any like stats on the weapons and stuff, but are we gonna have either on gear or weapons abilities which proc 5% chance to do this, 3% chance to do that? If you have,
yes, but right now that is reserved only for pocket items. That can change,
I'm asking. I don't personally like procs and things that work on chance, so I'm just checking. It's a personal thing. However, I have a question which always baffled me both on Age of Reckoning and Return of Reckoning regarding resistances. On the defensive stats, there's resistances. On both versions of Age and Return of Reckoning, resistant debuff specifically is a flat number. Like you throw a corporeal grenade, which removes corporeal resistance from the engineer, you remove 300 corporeal resistance. You don't remove 30% or 10%. Is that going to be the same here, flat number, or is that going to be a percentage?
In general, that is one of the few things that I believe Mythic actually got correct. If you use too many percent increases, a good example of this is WoW. If you use too many percent increases in a game, you get issues where like one stat becomes extraordinarily important just because of that percent modifiers. It's one of the primary reasons that Mythic did go with a flat decrease system for all their stats. We have done the same. Now, I will say that on Interbellum, it's not very easy to notice in that stat public release I did, but resistances and armor have diminishing returns.
Right, okay, well, that's good. I mean, on the other games, they're hard capped at a certain number, but the reason why I'm asking is this. If, let's say, somebody invests and gets 1,000 resist in a specific element, okay? And I do a 300 debuff flat, then I take him down by 300 points because that's 700. That is a 30% reduction in his elemental resistance, whatever type it is. But if someone hasn't just a DPS and he has 400, for example, 300, and I do a flat 300, I don't do 30%, I do 100%. So
hence
there's a
why
big
I
difference
said they
there.
now suffer from DR.
Right, okay.
Yeah. Diminishing return was applied to attach that. And also to keep block from becoming ridiculously OP.
Okay, just checking because, you know, I'm just checking a few things and formulas and mechanisms because you've changed everything. So I want to see how things going to work a little bit because I get a lot of questions from people both on YouTube, tweets, and Discord that, you know, from, you know, is how that's going to work, how many classes, how many this, how many that. So I'm just trying to get as many questions as I can in this.
That's fine. Math is my strong suit.
Good. So there's a very like wide question. Like people are asking me, like, is there a website? Is there forums? You guys gonna have one? So you know they can visit that and get updates or whatnot, or it's just Discord. What you gonna do about that?
We had a forum in the past on our previous testing. Whenever we went dark for a little bit to handle something else, we took the forum down. Right now, we do not have the forum active. We did archive the forum though, so we have access to everything we released back then. Right now, we are only using our Discord and our YouTube. I don't think we're using anything else. Void can clarify if we are, to get information out to people.
Can you give us maybe a brief roadmap of where you see the game being right now and where it needs to be for it to actually reach the players and launch like a 1.0?
I think I briefly touched that when I was talking about testing at the very beginning when you asked me the ETA question.
Yeah, I'm just doing it again just because I want more information.
So basically, we plan on doing closed tests again soon, like outside of team members. And after the idea of that is to slowly increase the number of people that are on the server to make sure nothing is breaking. Because we don't want to release to a large number of people and then something really bad break and we have to drop the server rate. That's just a really bad situation to be in. So primary focus of tests right now is to get people to log in and to basically fuck around and find out until something gets broken, right? And then once we're fairly certain that that's not an issue, then we start pulling in more and more and more people trying to get it to break. As we start releasing more of the content for people to play, and test around with and give us feedback on. Because not all the I did put those values that you see on the builder I gave you are the values that are currently designed for it, but we might need to change them. So
Right. So
yeah,
you don't.
as we go ahead.
I was just going to say, so you don't see yourself doing something more like Return of Reckoning did, where they still have on their website that they're in an alpha test, and they got players in there from the earliest days up until things were broken and fixing them, and then just straight on through. You see it more as launching when the project is kind of feature complete for a launch, rather than have people play it in a alpha state.
Correct. I remember I was there in the early days of Return of Reckoning, and I remember the Eternal Alpha jokes. So, in regards to Interbellum, it is a more, I wouldn't call us professionals, but it's like professional-esque style. Like, hey, we want to test. We're going to slowly increase the number of testers because we want to make sure that when we actually say, okay, now we're making people start from level 1, start playing, that any new people come in, it doesn't crash and burn and put them off from ever playing ever again. So yeah, we do have a internal set of rules that we want to, like, not rules, but things we want to get done before we go, okay, everyone start playing now, you're level 1, have fun.
And do you see it launching with like a more feature complete version, fortresses, cities, Land of the Dead, or are you more concerned with just getting a gameplay loop, like just tier 1, tier plus, ready, and then adding that stuff down the road?
Adding that stuff down the road. Consider it expansions. Basically, once we get to the point that we expect people can reasonably have fun for long periods of time, that's like one of the reasons of the season stuff, is that, say we have finished fortresses, brain. Say when we do finish fortresses, that would come at the end of the season. So yeah, we want good RVR, decent scenarios, good PvP, gear system that works, stuff like that. Minimum amount of PvE to, like I said earlier in this roundtable, and then we're good to launch as long as everything works, and then everything else be added as we go on.
And just to be clear, at the end of a season, you keep your character and everything that you've accumulated. It's just that the next season may increase the gear cap or add new content.
Correct. This is not Diablo. You do not have to make a new character every season. Seasons are just the way we're describing when we will change things. Also, certain things like leaderboards will be on seasonal resets. Things like rewards for ranked PvP will be on seasonal resets. And of course, that's when we will implement any potential large changes we have, any potential medium to large balance changes we have, stuff like that. You will not need to recreate a character just because we're going to season 2.
I'm gonna go back to the gear question as Sarbek's done with his question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. You were saying that all gear is going to look the exact same and it's going to have very minimal stats, so on and so forth, and set bonuses are going to maybe be iteration later on. But yet, transmog is going to be the thing that everybody is going to have to learn to do so that they don't look the exact same. Does that mean that with Warcrest, medallions, emblems, whatever form of currency you have, does that mean we spend that on just a transmog set of Sovereign, Warlord, or all that, or are they drops? I mean, how exactly is that going to be implemented?
So appearance gear. So for example, Sovereign appearance gear would be earned in a specific way or through currency. It just depends on the particular reward. But it will not be earned in the same way that you earn combat gear. Like, you'll get combat gear thrown at you, like just metric tons of combat gear thrown at you. Right? Whereas appearances you'll like do specific things to obtain them. I don't know if they'll be dropped. We haven't fully gone into appearance gear other than saying we are definitely separating it and using it as like a different reward structure. Because appearance gear doesn't alter combat, but a lot of people like appearance gear, right? So appearance gear can be used as a reward.
brother.
Exactly. I'll give you a good example. I like appearance gear. I like making my character look pretty and putting dyes on it. Another member of my staff, Middle, has straight up said that he would play the game if he was a marshmallow poking people with a toothpick as long as the game was fun, right? Different style people. But we know from experience and from game design documents that people will actively will do things to obtain cooler looking appearances, as long as it's not, ridiculousness involved. So they fall under a different reward structure, but they will be available. Everyone won't look the same. It's just all pieces of combat gear will, so that you're using your appearance items too.
That's what that was the whole point of what
And
I'm trying to get at. Is that you're going to have all your people out there that just don't care, and so they're just going to look like everybody else. Whereas, anybody who plays this game long enough knows that the true end game is Fashion Hammer. And with that is my next question with what you said already is the art going to do any custom stuff, or are you also going to allow all forms of what we see and know about in ROR and AOR? Are y'all going to have that so that we can customize into that? For
if
instance,
it exists in Mythic,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
If it exists in Mythic client, you'll be able to have it. If it is a Return of Reckoning specific art piece, which, like I said, if it already exists in the client, you can have it. Some of what Return of Reckoning has put out before already existed in the client. Any artwork that we find that is not already in Mythic's client, aka that Return of Reckoning has made themselves, we will not take it.
Don't worry, Ortho. Aviator goggles are part of the original game, so you can still get them.
Yeah.
Yes, they are.
Yes,
and they're going to be tradable. What? You said it. All gear is tradable. You said that.
I said all combat gear is tradable, yes. We have
Damn.
not made the decision on appearance gear.
Damn.
But yes, the aviator goggles are in the client. That's not a Return of Reckoning.
No, I'm looking at other things. I'm theorying in my head because like Gorfine, the model that's in AOR is that he has 2 one-handed weapons with a shield on his arm. So I mean, if I can transmog to look like that, stuff like that, and then also like Patrick from the Bright Wizard Patriarch, running around looking like him, stuff like that.
I know from what I have been told, some of that stuff, I don't know how much of what you described, but some things that you see on NPCs aren't individual pieces of artwork. Sometimes they're just it's built into the NPC's architecture. I know for a fact that you can dual wield with a shield though, on your arm because of how how weapons are attached to your character. So much so that even putting like a 2-handed weapon in a range slot still looks exactly like a 2-handed weapon. So you could, I don't think we have it, but like if I made like a shield and put it in the range slot and you equipped it and you were dual wielding, it would still appear on your character. So I know that particular thing is possible, but the rest of it is
How many
no idea.
armor slots and weapon slots are there going to be per character?
They're the same. It's just when I say range slot, it's that 3rd weapon slot that usually only engineer, engineer, Magus, not Magus, engineer, Shadow Warrior, and Squig Herder are the ones that use range slots normally. But I am using that range slot for some other things.
since we're on the whole, Fashion Hammer situation, I just came up with a question. I know we refer a lot to RR because the thing people will be playing lately, anyways.
Mhm.
They have generated or created a series of I don't know how to call seasonal events, basically PVE with some PvP events, which also reward dyes and some other gear, some cosmetics, whatnot. Do you have any plans on creating PvP events? I don't care about so much about what's going to be the rewards, whatever, but are there going to be any PvP events, seasonal PvP events, or?
Yes.
So
Okay.
you are going to do your own events. Okay, that's good.
Yes. There's part of a community manager's job, actually.
Here's something kind of related to that in a way, tangentially. Is the Renown rank cap going to be 80? Do you see moving that higher as the game progresses, or are you kind of hard locked into how high you can go?
Since we are no longer attaching any combat-related benefit to Renown rank will decay, not reset, will decay in between seasons and will be used as one of a handful of metrics for different rewards per season.
Awesome. That's pretty
Yeah,
cool.
I get where you're going with that.
So just, sorry, Fixer, can I just ask
No,
one?
no. Yeah.
So if you're a long time, Return of Reckoning, Age of Reckoning player, like you're used to a lot of like dramatic things happening, Warhammer shutting down, Return of Reckoning has had a lot of, dev drama over the years. How do you think you're going to satiate the Warhammer player base's thirst for that drama with your server?
Wait, you want me to create drama? Is that what your
I'm not
question
saying I want you
was?
to create it. I'm just saying, how are you going to, keep those standards high?
That doesn't sound like high standards. That sounds like low standards.
Every game needs drama.
It's a PvP game.
So far, our team structure protects us from the drama.
I didn't understand any of that.
It's okay. He works like 5 million hours a week. But what he was saying is that our team structure is set up to prevent as much as that coming from us as possible. I can expect any drama that you receive on Interbellum is going to be player generated.
That'll have to do.
Dutchwise has
It's a PvP game, so I mean, if you want some drama, go look at #TrashTalk.
Dutchwise has a good question in chat if you'd like to read it aloud.
Of course.
Yeah, I got a question. The question is something I've heard before in the old server. We have a lot of different kind of mounts in the game. But from what I understood was that they were all based on time limits, and it was very hard to create new mounts. And a lot of people in the community would have loved to have new types of mounts because everybody was always running around on the same mounts and such. So is that a thing on your server, seeing the transmog situation?
Are you asking, are we going to have temporary mounts, or are you going to ask if we're having additional mounts?
Both, basically. Are the temporary mounts there, or are we going to get mounts that you basically purchase in-game and you keep them, like the normal mounts? So we have a bit more flavor.
So I will go with my response. This is not a team official response, just because it hasn't been discussed. But I think I know what a lot of their responses will be. Temporary mounts or temporary appearance items or whatever seem silly. If you earn something, if you pay for something, if you earn it, you get it. Like, it's yours. You should keep it. That's my personal opinion. Like I said, the team hasn't really went through that. When that discussion happens, you can tell that my side of the argument is going to be towards they're permanent. In terms of new mount creation, Leslie typed something in the private roundtable chat about it being tied to resources. There are some NPCs that have decent animations for being ridden, but not a lot. And it just kind of depends on how many artists, animators, and stuff we can pull over time. to be able to create more
Right.
mounts.
As far as I know, it has nothing to do with Interbellum or whatever. This information doesn't come from Interbellum. I'm just making that absolutely clear. As far as I know, there's 26 or 27 different mount models on the database, which half of them are not fitting some textures and the other half don't have animation. So either server wants to do mounts, they have to put a lot of resources into it. And since we're on that topic, there's also 225 or 230 different pets, which also have pretty much the same problem.
Yes,
So
he is correct.
I wouldn't be. I mean, the pet's in a better state. There's a lot less that have issues, but I wouldn't expect to have them coming out really fast because the other topics that both servers need to battle first. Because I know people are going to ask, so I thought I might just put that out there for them, or my own information.
That one is more related to art team, and just related to the tool sets and capabilities of people that we get on our art team. Which this is why Lefsy's not the director of art, because he references people as resources.
Just a quick question. We've seen the 3 different paths from the Runescribe, and we know we can change the specialization in the hard specialization anytime we want. Is there any system? Just asking. Is there any system which we can save our builds and not just take out 30 points and put back 30 points? So you can have your support ready and not click a button, change it, and.
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay.
For your class makeup, do you see a group that focuses on bringing range DPS versus melee DPS as both being viable, or do you see range being better in an open RBR situation and melee being better in a scenario, or vice versa?
Before you answer that, just to build on Zarbik's question, is there going to be a problem with range and melee, as Zarbik's put it, because we have the situation where Order, at least on the previous versions, play a lot more ranged over melee on the Destro side, or the classes can be split more evenly on your system?
There are more classes that fight, or more specializations that fight in what I would call hybrid range. Just going to make that even more complicated to answer. The base system has a percent output penalty for skills that are used based off its range, which that penalty is attached to how much time it takes for you to run that distance. Cast time abilities have a percent output increase based off of their cast time, which is very low curve exponential. So higher cast abilities do more damage per second than instant cast abilities, because you have to stand still. You lose that modifier if it's a move cast skill. So in general, melee can do more damage than ranged, but of course, most of the time they require to be in melee to do it. They also get a little bit more free defensive stuff than ranged to make up for the fact that they have to be in melee. I can say, just out of the nature of PvP, that the more people that exist in a particular area, the less likely you are to see melee, right? Just because of how any PvP in any game works. But an example of how we've kind of looked at this problem is melee DPS on Age of Reckoning, and I'm sure probably still on Return of Reckoning, but I don't know. they have AoE detaunt, right, for 30 feet. On ours, that's actually been changed to a damage reduction ability and an outgoing damage reduction ability. So now when they use what is their equivalent of an AoE detaunt, they take that least amount of damage from everybody, including ranged DPS that are 125 feet away from them. But they themselves do less damage, so they can't like pop it and still kill somebody. But they can use it to survive against anyone at any range. Because now it's that is an example of what we've given to melee DPS that range DPS don't have, right? They just got a detaunt still for their default defensive. So yeah, outside of output being higher for melee, casters having a decrease for their range, and like a little more defensive thrown melee DPS way, we haven't. That's what I got for you. It should be enough. If it's not, we'll have to fix it.
Sorry about that.
No, go ahead.
Now, are casters going to get any form of cast protection for where they're like 2/3 of the way full on the cast? Somebody goes behind a tree and it just ends right then and there, or is it going to complete any form of protection like that?
I see Ava unmuted.
That depends entirely what people request of me.
Okay.
But that basically means is I can tell him at what point I want the cast to no longer look for tell him at what point the cast looks for a line of sight. Right now, if I remember, he's building it towards the behavior that Live had. If we need to change it, we will.
The behavior Live had.
Was that a question?
No, sorry. Because I was just thinking there's a couple of skills. The snipe from the Magus, the snipe from the engineer, the ability of the turret from the machine gun, the spitting ability of the squig that shoot a lot of projectiles. When the cast is done, okay, and you are within range, even if you get out of range, you get hit. If the cast is finished and you go inside your keep, the bullets, the spell, or the squig, thorns, whatever they are, they will go through the walls and hit you because the cast finished while you were visible and then you're not. So I'm just trying. I was working that in my mind, thinking out loud. Sorry.
Yes, that would still be the case no matter when we decided to consider your line of sight broke, because the projectile doesn't exist. The projectile is an animation.
Yeah. The server will send you a packet to say what the projectile flight time is based on the distance, and then the client will track it automatically. So you'll always get projectiles going through walls if you move after the ability's been cast.
Yep. Okay.
Is
Thank you.
Interbellum doing their own animations? Are we going to have custom animations from this team? Or is it the same old, same old?
You will have animations. No, so for example, when we did phase 2 testing, we realized that pretty much every single warrior priest ability uses the same animation, and we fixed it. But we used the ones that Mythic had. Mythic has somewhere like 100 and something animations per race per weapon, and the animations are separated by weapon model and race model. So there are a lot of animations that are not used, that you've not seen. So you will get some you have not seen, but I'm not saying we made them. We just reassigned them. And Leslie is typing in chat about animations, so you'll get new ones in terms of you, but I don't want to take credit for them because they exist in the client.
Thank you.
I saw earlier today that Azrael was playing Sekiro. Is that the kind of difficulty of combat that we can expect in Interbellum?
Uninstall. Uninstall.
No, actually, like I said, you did pick the class that's got like it's the least. It's one of the more unique classes. What you guys ended up picking. Almost nothing in our game has cooldowns except like CCs and a couple very important buffs and stuff. But like, you're restricted by your resources. So in terms of how difficult the combat is, you're looking at 12 abilities, 12 plus 1 abilities standard across classes. You're looking at 2 pocket items potentially that are on use skills, a potion, and that's what you're running with for abilities. So
free potion.
Well, a potion on although I'll give you that one of the pocket items that you'll start with. It's called Soldier's Tincture. It's essentially a free potion. We had it as an ability in our last test, so
infinite use.
You will, an on-use pot essentially that
nice.
never goes away.
That's really nice. Sorry for
but,
interrupting.
No, that's fine. That's fine. So now where was I? I actually forgot.
Yeah. That's my apology. I apologize, everybody.
12 abilities.
That's okay. Oh, right. So I don't think the combat overall will be difficult. In fact, it will probably be in some cases easier than what because you're not tracking. One of the reasons why I said nerf button wouldn't be as needed is because you're not tracking so much. For example, you play a warrior priest on Age of Reckoning. You've got Sigmar's Fist, right? 20-second duration buff. If you don't have Sigmar's Fist on you, you're missing 114 strength or however much strength it gave you. And so you run add-ons to make sure you've got Sigmar's Fist attached, or you have nerf buttons apply it whenever it's 2 seconds from dropping or stuff like that. We don't have that. You've got the increased reduced strength system, but it's not I think what someone with is either John or Leslie called it maintenance hammer for the way a lot of classes play, and we've removed a lot of that. So in a lot of cases, it will be simpler to play your classes. So like the floor has dropped in terms of what is necessary to play the class, but because we've added a whole bunch of other things, the ceiling has also increased for skill. If that makes sense. Yeah, you're not spamming AoE heals, Dutch. That will not be the best way to heal like anything.
I actually need to drop, but thank you guys very much for doing this, and thank you for taking the time to answer so many questions.
No problem. You have a good evening,
definitely. We'll be having some.
See you later.
We'll be answering more questions. We'll get that uploaded as well. But appreciate you for coming in.
Great. Thanks, guys. Have a good night.
Yeah, you too.
Later.
Yeah, that was one of my bigger concerns always about playing a healer. Playing healer is fun, but it's very static gameplay. And that is also why in the past that I asked you guys about, hey, is it possible for the setup to do more like live stealing, stealing health, giving it to your friends, stuff like that, to make the fights a lot more dynamic.
Well, here, we've got a healer. We've got a healer right here on the builder, so I'll go through that. So one, I already told you about the mechanic of the Runescribe, right? Which already makes you have to figure out when you should use certain skills as a Runepriest, because that actually is the Runepriest is the healing spec for Runescribe. So you've got Rune of Mending, which is your 2.5 second really big heal that you could augment to make it do more healing and also not have a cooldown. You've got Rune of Hearth and Home, which makes it to where that if you've applied Rune of Hearth and Home to somebody, whenever you Rune of Mending another target, you also Rune of Mending your Rune of Hearth and Home target. So kind of similar to Holy Paladins.
Dark Protector. Yeah, the Dark Protector basically of Blackguard.
Yeah, Dark Protector as a healer. Yep, that's a good Age of Reckoning reference. Dark Protector, but for a healer. Then you've got Rune of Cleaving. So normally it's a damage buff for the person that you apply it to. But as a Runepriest, you also get a passive called Rune of Subversion, that whenever an ally triggers Rune of Cleaving, they are healed, so that you can give out temporary on-hit healing procs to your teammates. And you give them out individually, right? So you could apply it to somebody who's taking damage, and while they're attacking, they gain heals, and that's a form of a hot for you. Then you have Rune of Adamant, which is a life tap, and it's on a Grimnir rune instead of a Valea. So you've got a different method of, like, if your Valea's on cooldown, you can still Rune of Adamant in order to heal somebody. And you've got about the only thing that we actually kept from old school Runepriest. You've got an instant casts, like, baby heal, essentially. I don't remember what it's called on Age of Reckoning, but you've got an instant cast baby heal that you can spam whenever you're moving, or whenever you don't need large heals going out. And then what's the other? There's another heal somewhere. Oh, and then you've got an Absorb, which is useful because it's not affected by healing received stats and debuffs and stuff like that. So yeah, you have to pick your heals for the situation. Just kind of like you have to do with all the DPS and everything. So there is a lot less of I 1 or 2 buttons as a healer and then dispel people and res them if they die.
Okay. Now talking from the zealous perspective again. Transference, is that still part of the game, or did you guys completely remove that? That's the ability where a percentage of your damage became healing on your defensive target.
I'm going to tell you that has become more of a part of a zealot's mechanic than you could possibly think of.
Oh, yes, finally.
I'm looking at the concussive rune, off of Rune of Impact and the Runepriest off of the Runescribe. It says that knocks them up. So Runepriest now gets a 9-person knock-up.
So that is from our tests, and it was really fun. So you can assign.
Hold on a second, sir. Quick question on that. Do they take damage when they land?
No, I can make it that way though. But so when I was messing with knockbacks back in phase 1 testing, really, I was messing with the way knockback system worked, and I went overboard on purpose, and we were knocking people straight up into the sky like 100+ feet, right? But there is a gravity mechanic that you can basically adjust someone's gravity whenever you knock them up. So you can have effects that knock people up into the air and they fall slower. So it's kind of like a knockdown where they don't move, right? They don't change, X, Y coordinate positions. But they're in the sky, so they can't really do anything other than like an instant cast because they're moving, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a handful of effects that will knock people straight up. A good example of one that's not on what you can see, but it's an A4 that knocks up 96 people into the sky. So one of the ways that you can get around a funnel in a door situation is you can literally just knock them all up and run underneath them.
Well, you say that, and hold on a second, sir. Is earlier you were talking about some class, some DPS class that has their the I win button that can hit up to 96 players and everything like that. Now you just said that the certain class has an ability that can knock 96 people up into the air.
Well, actually, that's on morale, but yeah.
I'm sorry. With that, do they again not have any defenses in the air? And if they don't, how are they not dead from that one character doing the one button?
So one character can't do it. It's one character hitting all those people. One, I don't expect 96 people to be there. I just put the 96 target as.
Oh no, I was just
Yeah.
going off of you.
Yeah. But so Zerg besting skills are designed to work in tandem. But you only need like 3 or 4 of them to fire in order to kill a large group of people. If you are all standing in front of the door, all of you, not just your tanks, all of you are standing in front of the door trying to block someone, yeah, they're going to use their Zerg busters on you and you're probably going to die, unless you use yours first and they're all grouped up. But what I was referencing in terms of the knock-up is it's not really meant, like, it's not a knockback, right? It's a knock-up. It still triggers the same immunity as knockbacks, but it's, when it says knock up, it does mean literally up into the sky and then back down.
No, I understood that, and I was also meaning that whenever they are up in the air, in AOR and ROR, they have 0 resistances. So usually, whenever you have a cob and they're running their two-handed build, they knock them up really high in the sky and they're dead before they hit the ground. Doesn't matter what class you are. 0 resistance, 100% strike through. And so that's what I'm used to. Are y'all gonna have the same thing?
I don't think so.
Okay, so people who are knocked up in the air keep all of their resistances and defenses, and okay, so yes, I understand.
Yeah. I mean, I might take away their. I mean, I could potentially take away their dodge, but that really wouldn't get you much. Dodge is not a very easy to obtain stat.
No, I was just looking at it from the point of view is that they lose everything, and so that one guy that's doing a dot that just stacks up off everybody, and he could just decimate the entire freaking thing. So, but no, I get it now. Thank you. But no, I do like the idea of the whole knockup for where it's an AoE knockup as well.
Yes.
That could also be used to get into areas people are not allowed to.
I mean, you go straight up, so you can't actually like move forward or backwards.
Well, can they take a punt while they're still going up? Say,
Nope, they have an immunity.
Okay.
Yeah, they'll have an immunity at that point. Because like I said, it is considered a knockback to the client. So you still get immovable if you get knocked up. So you can't be kicked again.
Okay.
Although that would be fun to play around with before it goes live.
Yeah. Try to find that way to make it so that you can knock somebody up and get them in the keep hole and the golf hole.
Quick question, because I'm also reading a little bit of the chat there. So this Zerg casting skills, which have a much bigger potency when you hit a lot of people. Have you so far determined what is the radius of the amount of people, like X amount of people in 10 feet radius, 20, 30, 100?
They change depending on how they're built. The general answer to your question is 30 feet, but there are some that work a little different.
Okay.
Sorry, I wasn't reading chat.
I wasn't either. I haven't read anything on the server since this roundtable started. So unless someone points something out to me, I'm reading because I haven't.
Quick, I don't know if we covered.
I don't.
Sorry, I don't know if we covered this or not because girlfriend was here, so I didn't listen the last 5 minutes. Regarding skills per class, have you guys changed the skills we had, all of them, and if you have added new ones?
Yes and yes.
Amazing. Sorry, I really like the answer.
I mean,
look, it's been a game I've played on live server. I've only had the privilege to play for 2 years the original game, then it shut down. Then I've played the private server, which resembled the original. Then I went and played to the American server that didn't have a lot of people, that was closer to live. Then I played on another server that lasted for like 2 weeks. No joke, and no pun intended. And now this server, Interbellum is introducing a lot more modern playstyles, new systems, and everything. So, as far as I'm concerned, it may have the shell of on Warhammer Online, which is the universe we like and all this, and the lore, of course. But underneath the hood is something totally new and different, and that is exciting because, as Ramasee said earlier, we're lacking a good PvP game. And trust me, I've been through all of them. So yeah, when you hear me say, "Yeah, amazing," I mean it. I'm not taking the piss.
I'll give you an example. So, like I said, you guys did pick the class that I have like the least ability to show conservatism, right?
I wouldn't say
we
that.
do have as much as possible. There are classes that, or at least one spec for a class that plays enough like what you understand it to play. For example, the Rifleman Engineer on our server, while it might have a little bit of differences, especially in like how it interacts with its mechanic, it plays very much like what you would expect a Rifleman Engineer to play. It's the Tinker that's batshit out of field, right? Because you don't know what a tank engineer is. No one's seen a tank engineer in Warhammer before.
I'm sorry, that is not true.
A real.
You haven't seen me play.
Putting
you haven't seen me play. Take on 3 which will solid 5 feet.
Are you Dayward?
That's true.
Oh, you cheat.
Nope. I got a video to prove it.
And for classes that we could do that with, we did. So we did keep as much conservatism, at least in one specialization, as we could when we were changing some things. Just because, I mean, Mythic did build Age of Reckoning with some lore in mind. I mean, they kind of botched some things, like the Druchii would never work with, Archaon Ever Chosen. But hey, like outside of some stuff like that, they did kind of pull in a lot of it. So we kept the things that already had an identity. If it had an identity, like a distinct, like, okay, this class actually has this like really kind of cool thing or this kind of gameplay, we tried to keep at least one of our specs near that for that class. There's a couple things that went out the window. Runepriest was one, just because it didn't really have any identity. Same with Zealot.
True.
Things like the White Lion didn't really have much of a identity other than the pet. Like, the pet was there, but other than that, it was just the dude who ran around spinning AP.
Now that you said the pet, so it just popped in my head that you said that. Previous versions, all mobile pets, even static pets, to be honest, some other versions, have serious pathing issues. Have you guys solved those kind of things?
Not yet.
Okay.
And
they were like crazy pathing issues.
In fact, you probably won't see a pet in the first iteration of Phase 3 testing just because of that.
Okay.
At least a mobile pet.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm asking these questions because I've seen how the community reacted and how frustrating people were trying to play the class. Because, like if you're playing a lion with a pet, you want the pet to be working. You're losing a lot of your utility, a lot of your damage. Same as the engineer deploying a turret or a turret and going underneath the earth. There's no point in having it. It's half your mechanic gone. So I'm just checking how things are at this stage.
Yep, I did. We did build classes that have pets. They don't necessarily. It's not their mechanic. It's not if your pet dies or whatever. Like, you're completely gimped. As much as possible, classes have a primary mechanic and several sub mechanics. So, in the case of pet classes, in most circumstances, the pets are sub mechanics and are attached to specializations, not cross-sell class.
Yeah, good. So I have a lot more builds to play with and discover, which is exciting for me. I like making builds.
Yeah.
Personally, I think I don't have any more questions. I think for today, so I don't know if anybody else has something.
Yeah. So, with the way BO works with the dance step and just like the SM, are y'all keeping that aspect into the game?
No.
No, you're not.
So Swordmaster gets a reworked version of that, utilizing sigils. It goes into when I say a combo point system, I don't mean like combo points 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I mean like this ability gives you this, which modifies these 3 abilities in different ways. So they've got something that kind of plays like the 1, 2, 3 mechanic, but not. It's got a lot of the really bad downsides of that have been removed, and there's a lot more adaptability into it. Swordmaster was a class that I played. I remember the 1, 2, 3 mechanic a lot. Hated it. Black Orc is actually getting a completely different system related to weapon mastery because Black Orcs have all the shinies.
Yeah.
Black Orcs actually get Black Orc is the specializations that one of the reasons why we don't have combat stats on gear is because they're the ones that have a whole bunch of weapons.
Okay. So, earlier you said that you'll be able to change tactics in mid gear and everything like that, and the weapons don't have any stats and so on and so forth. The only thing that they bring is basically DPS, right?
Nope, they don't even do that. You don't have auto attacks.
Okay, so then two-hander just unlocks specific abilities versus the one-handed weapons.
So I started saying the weapons that each class equips when I was doing the whole rundown for you, but I stopped because it was a lot of talking. Generally, outside of Black Orc, I just told you they have a weapon mastery system. Outside of Black Orc, the weapon that is attached to a specialization is the only weapons that they can equip. And the point of that is a visual distinction between one specialization and another. So if you see a Dark Elf in heavy armor wielding a sword and a shield, you know it's the Tower Master. If you see it wielding a two-handed polearm, you know it's the Blackguard. If you see it wielding a two-handed sword, you know it's the Executioner. And that is the primary in-game reason as to why classes have specific weapons. The secondary reason is it looks cool.
Right, the mastery for the Black Orc. What exactly does that entail? Is it just for what they're wearing or for all of it?
I don't understand the question.
Okay. Typical mastery, from my understanding, is it goes all the way down to bare hands, to one-handed this, one-handed axe, one-handed, two-handed, a pole arm, swords, daggers, everything like that. So with the mastery with the Black Orc, from what I know about the game, is that they use axes and swords. So, will we be leveling up masteries?
No,
Like,
no leveling of weapon skills.
okay.
Fuck that.
Okay. Well, no, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I thought it was something new, some RPG element to an MMO, but that was long
Yeah,
ago.
it's cool the first time you do it. It sucks the 20th time you do it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I got you. So,
But yeah, what weapon you can equip is given to you when you choose your hard specialization.
also, I wasn't paying attention good enough earlier. When you were talking about the Black Orc, are they allowed to wear shields anymore?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, one
so-
specialization on them, yes.
No, it's just earlier. I heard earlier, if I remember right, it was DPS, and off tank or something like that. So,
I think it was tank, offensive support, DPS.
oh, offensive support. Okay.
Yeah, they got a big old sword and board. I don't take damage. Black Orc that also can throw on a two-hander, in his ranged weapon slot and swap between them.
What is the cost to change the spec? Leave the tree?
Undefined. We haven't worked that out yet. We just know that there will be one. just because you are essentially changing what your class is. But you get to keep all the gear and stuff that you have. So there will be one. It won't be free like respecking, but we have not worked out exactly what that will entail. I'll give you. Our lore master wants you to go through a quest for it, which I get from
Every
one
time?
point, but then yeah, I get from one point, and then I was like, it's kind of cool the first time you do it, but it sucks the
Yeah.
20th time you do it, right?
Yeah. No, I understand that.
Well, you know what? I'm just gonna say this. Although I'm not a lore person and I don't like being funneled into quests to get gear like forever, but
Right.
it's nice to be put in a situation where you learn a few things about the lore or the background of your character. I comes from a person that skips quests, okay? But I think it's nice. Just you need
I'm
a
with you.
little bit of that. You need a little bit of that.
Oh,
A lot
absolutely.
of PvP, but I mean, like a lot of the times, like I'll give you an example, like New World, that I have about 2,000 hours on that game. God forbid I do that shit again. The whole story is just not worth doing it. You know what I mean? It's all about skip. It's just the story is bad, but and because of that, the character doesn't have a background. And a lot of times you say about Fashion Hammer, right? When I play my characters, and I love my engineer, I love my fixer, if he dies, I get upset. If I play anybody else, my Runepriest, Destro, any other class, it doesn't matter to me. But fixer, which is like me in the game, it has to look good, it has to be good. You know what I mean? So having a little bit of lore behind it, for people like me that, we don't remember books, who don't read so much, it's good. So don't have a go at your lore master. Let him put some more stuff in there.
No. So the reason why I said that it's about the lore master is because it's a cool idea, and it's something that, like I said, it's fun to do once. So it's probably we haven't ironed it out, but it's probably something you will do once. Like if you want to swap between a pyromancer bright wizard to an arsonist, but you've never been an arsonist bright wizard before, you might have to do something extra that you wouldn't do if you were doing it for the second time.
Yeah, like do it to unlock the spec, and then you're done. You can change whenever you want. Yeah, that's cool.
Right. But we haven't, like I said, we haven't ironed it out. But that's why I reference that, because we've got, a whole bunch of ideas. We just haven't, been like, this is what we're doing.
All good. Quiet again.
I've got a ton of questions. It's just, yeah.
Ask away. We're all here. Keep going.
Well, it's just that I'm looking at this, and these trees they kind of mirror themselves in the majority of it, but they have their little bitty aspects that they give class flavor. But from what I'm seeing is that there's not much class flavor in these trees, and I know that it's just the trees. Where else are you going to apply your class flavor? Excuse me.
If by flavor, or do you mean that the fact that every single one of those tooltips is very dry?
No. See, like looking at Runelord, for where they have Rune of Flight, and then the tactic goes into, it'll hit up to 8 other enemies for 50% of damage. Whereas then when you go down and then you look at extra cleave and it hits 6 stacks. Whereas then when you go to Runepriest, it's not there, and what they get is adamant, and it does what it does, and then no place like home. And then in place of extra cleaving, they have an extra tactic and Priest of Alea. So that's the little bit of flavor that I'm talking about. And then when you go over to Runesmith, and you get immolation, and then you get the tactic inaccuracy. So, but basically everything else, and the trees are basically the same thing as everybody else. It's just, there's not much class flavor. Like what makes them actually a Runelord is what I'm getting at. And is it not just here, or is it in other aspects of the game?
You mean what makes them a Runelord in terms of the lore?
Yes. Like, how do you know you're playing a Runelord? Other than just looking at the weapon and everything like that, how does he play compared to everybody else? How is the flavor of it?
So the point of a class is that they all play kind of the same. So a class plays as a base gameplay loop, and then the specialization changes what you do with the gameplay loop. So a Runesmith and a Runelord kind of play the same, and you're right about that. They share a lot of abilities, even if they change the way they work some. In this particular case, there is these little subtle things on the builder that change how you interact, because, for example, Runelords have an extra Grimnir rune, or I think it's 2 extra Grimnir runes. I don't remember the exact math. But basically, they have a different number in each category for the runes. It's something you have to play out to really notice. So much so that you're gonna want, by natural, like when you start playing a rune board, you're gonna naturally spend your rune augmentation action points on more Grimnir runes, because there's more Grimnir stuff you want to do than necessarily the Leia stuff. And that's going to change, but like the overall gameplay of your abilities go on cooldown, they have shared cooldowns, you use rune augmentation to make them better and not go on cooldown is the same. But like how you interact with that to do what you want to do changes. So there is 24 super unique things, and then 3 things that just little tweak the unique gameplay loop to fit it better towards the archetype. And they also do sometimes have some unique effects from each other. For example, Runesmith has rune speed. I don't know if that answered your question or not.
Not really, no. But it's okay. I didn't ask it correctly. So.
It's all quiet again.
Yeah, I could play some Jeopardy music.
No.
Well, I don't know. I mean, we kind of covered a lot of things. I mean, we'll be talking for 3 hours. It's not like we covered a few things. You know what I mean? Unrelated to gameplay, but we're gonna have another one of these in the future as development goes forward.
You can expect general updates from us. Some video, some in text. That's like idea.
Yeah, and one thing,
talk to people.
One thing,
I probably got a question that shouldn't be asked, but I'm going to ask it anyway because I just don't fucking care.
42.
No, it's not that.
I agree. 42 is good.
With the asshole that is Grim and the asshole that is Max, and as power hungry as they are, and it's just the way that they are.
Go ahead. It's fine.
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm not asking if y'all are going to become that or anything like that. I'm not asking that. I'm asking how you're going to make sure that we as a player, how can we protect ourselves from somebody like that might get on the team later on in the future?
Okay, in the way you asked your questions, how you would defend yourselves
as a player.
I'm not sure if I could give you an answer to that. But what Void's going to talk about, and I'm going to briefly brief, and he can go more. A good example of what we're doing to make sure that kind of person can't exist for more than like a day is in the announcement for the private table. I told you that Void Chris has to be here as a moderator, right?
Yes.
Because he's community relations staff. And I'm not supposed to communicate with people in a public standpoint because it's part of our staff rules. So if someone, I'm going to go with when, not if. When someone like that actually happens to get on the team, they'll last like a day before they get kicked out for doing that kind of stuff to a player. Rule sets for staff are stricter than they are for players.
Okay.
And the only
Boyd can expand.
The only reason why we're keeping it that way is because we don't have any way of leveraging power over players, and that's one of the bigger ones there, at least especially for me. So, because again, as you already know, I used to work on the server, and I know a lot of things that have happened, and especially in the last of those years. And I can understand where a lot of those frustrations and there's a lot of frustrations and there's a lot of scare behind it. Most private servers, they can have issues corresponding with abuse or power trips, things like that. But because again, with community managers as well as both internal and as well as public facing staff, we have a lot of policies in place that if anybody were to act in any way, shape, or form that is classified as abuse, that breaks the terms of service, that breaks our code of conduct, we have very swift ways of getting rid of people like that. Because at the end of the day, remember this, right? We all love Warhammer as a whole, Warhammer as an IP, right? We want to be able to make a best experience for everybody who plays. Why would we, as a project, as a server, want to instill that sort of behavior for anyone, to treat like that to anyone, especially on staff or let alone a player base? So, do we have ways to mitigate people to act like a certain way? In the beginning, yes, but can we also make sure that no one is going to act like that? No and yes, because you cannot fully understand somebody's motives when you first meet them at face value. Obviously, when you meet people, right? People will give you any kind of answer, or anybody, if you know them for a while or whatnot, you just don't know. But when that time comes, when you start seeing them for the behaviors that they are, that's when you start making changes, and that's when you start moving. If it starts becoming more of a problem, if it starts becoming where you say, hey, this particular person needs to be removed for XYZ reasons, that goes to an internal vote, that goes to our aspects that we have to deal with. So we have a huge policy, a huge standpoint, a huge amount of rules that we have to take place for ourselves, because we hold ourselves to a much higher standard, that we have to act, because without a community, we're nothing. And we know that.
Thank you for your time.
Quick question, Void. Is there a TOS somewhere?
So actually, with the Interbellum Discord, if you look at the top left-hand corner, okay, well, I'm on desktop. If you go to the Warhammer Interbellum, if you go to the rules tab, we have a player code of conduct as of right now, especially how you should interact with other players. And then when the server does come on up, we will be updating it over time, but these are pretty much the basis to work with. There are going to be factors inside there as far as the staff code of conduct. Like I said, it will start evolving more later on down the road as we get much closer to launch. That being said, if you want to be able to look through that's public information for you.
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying if there was something else, because why I'm asking? I'm asking because of this. On the other private server, I personally went years ago and read the TOS, so I knew what to expect. As time went by, a lot of people that started playing didn't actually read it, and then they start thinking they had rights and opinions and so on and so forth. So I wanted to read them for myself first of all, and then inform other people that, guys, this is the TOS. You gotta be aware when you go on this server, this, and this is, you know what I mean? So people won't have false expectations. I just wanted to do some informational thing there. So that's why I'm asking. So if that's gonna be evolving, I'll keep an eye out for that.
For sure. And one thing to really kind of point out on that with community managers and with GMs as an example there, we have to follow strictly with what our terms of service says at that given point. Again, if any GM tries to sway it in their own way, or at least try to bend the rules, because what happens when you bend something, it can break, right? So if anybody who tries to bend it a specific way, they will be ejected out. At the end of the day, when the terms of service starts evolving, we don't want to make sure that no one has their own personal agendas kept at their side, and then they also have another book which is the terms of service, and then they're going to see how they can mesh it with each other. We don't want that. So I know where the frustrations come from because again, I understand that standpoint. I've been around a lot of that, and that is something I am making sure that never happens here for anything. Because obviously, as you guys have seen, like with Arc and a few others, there's a lot of abuse that goes in place, right?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, when you look at Interbellum, I want you guys to look at it as saying, hey, we're very passionate about Warhammer. We're very passionate about the staff. Our staff is very passionate about you guys. Why would we want to do anything like that to further hurt the image of Warhammer, let alone with us as a whole? That's who we are. Of course, but that's my take on it.
All good. Thank you for your answer.
No worries.
Is there any question y'all can think of that we didn't ask?
I think personally, after 3 hours and something, I think we pretty much covered a lot of things. Possibly we'll have more answers, but I gotta go through all the things we recorded, listen again, see if something else comes up. Right now it's like 1:20 in the morning for me, and I think I'm okay. But I'm not
Go get
done for the
kebab.
night. But
Go get a kebab, stay up for another 4.
I mean, I could always send you some money, and then you can go get some energy drinks. We can stay up another 6 hours.
oh, Void, you got me wrong. I'm not going to bed. I have a lot of work to do with this 3-hour
good.
recording, and just to be honest, when we're done, we say this is it. I'm gonna need 5-10 minutes of your time, anyways.
Ha ha.
Oh boy.
What? There's a few things I need to discuss with you from today, which has nothing to do with the recording. The other people here, so you're the community manager, so it falls to you, I suppose.
For sure. And always remember that Lou T is also one of the other community managers as well. So if you can't get a hold of me, you can always message him as well.
Ah, okay, cool.
Yeah, please
Thank
don't
you.
bother me.
Oh, I will.
He's only here. He's like so Ram is like Pandora's box, right? We open him up and many things come out.
I get private messages all the time about stuff like that. I'm like, don't talk to me. Talk to Void or Luth. Like,
no, I'll talk to whoever is thinking. But I think last time that I got something was from you. So let me see. Yep.
well, I mean, you asked me about art, and I gave you an art.
I didn't
gave
know
you
who
art
to
that
ask.
was. Oh, that was
Yeah,
fine. I
no.
can just pull that out of our like usable art channel. You asked for. I gave you the.
I didn't
the
know
logo.
who else to ask. I wasn't aware of all the positions yet. I'm new to
Oh,
this, so
that's
There you
fine.
go.
I get people who ask me questions, and I'm just like, take that to one of the CMs. It's not me.
No. But yeah, no. I take it as Fixer. If you need to go, that's perfectly fine. If you need to.
oh no, I'm not going anywhere until
you're
we're
not?
done. I'm not
Oh,
leaving.
okay.
No,
Okay.
no. It's
Okay.
look, probably gonna have to cut this off this recording. But look, I'm unemployed. I do streaming, so I had plenty of time. And tomorrow is a bank holiday anyway, so I am 100% committed to my online stuff, YouTube, Twitter, and this, because I want the new server to come out as soon as possible. I'm desperate, along with a lot of other people. So I'm staying here. I'm doing this. I'm informing people, and helping the people that are involved in this to learn more. And I'm happy I was invited, so I have the opportunity to do that. So I'm putting as many hours as I can into all my online stuff, and especially this, which I love Warhammer, as you guys do. All right, so I'm not going anywhere. So
For sure.
if we're done, we're done. If we're not done, I'm staying. I want to listen.
I've got one extra question. So,
Bastard.
yeah, so start recording again. With the Chosens, this is a very specific question. It's for one of my friends. He plays a Slaaneshi Chosen, and that's what he likes to RPS. And I know that you guys don't have that as a choice, but is there a chance that in the future you can have some form of event gear or something like that that could allow him to actually do something like that?
In terms of art, that's on the art team. In terms of game design,
No, nothing like game design or nothing. More like
Just
well, no,
sense.
I know. I'm just saying I
I'm
got
sorry.
something
All
for that too. For
Okay.
art, that's on the art team. That's down the line related to art for them. For me with game design, I will say that while each one of those chosen are specialized for a god, they all actually have abilities that are oriented, or at least one that are oriented around other gods, because chosen mechanic revolves around utilizing chaos corruption from the 4 different gods applied by other chaos units.
Thank you.
Just on that question, have you guys like even as a, let's say, I don't know, fantasy future whatever, have you ever considered to maybe expand the trees, instead of 3 have 4 or 5?
Not right now, no.
Okay.
Is it a possibility? Sure. I don't really know of any reason why it wouldn't be. It's just a matter of, if you expect, here's the one time where you get into the problem of, like, if you do something for one person, you got to do it for everyone. Say I could make a 4 spec for a couple of these classes, and I probably can pretty easily. We can't for every single one of them. For example, I even said when I was going down the class, we haven't built a 3rd spec for the Night Goblin yet. It's currently empty. So having to make another 24 specializations in order to not hear it constantly that Chosen has a 4th spec but Marauder doesn't.
Yeah, no, I get that. I was just saying if it was something, because like there was some ideas before on other servers that, you know, create mirror classes of the Marauder to Order or the Lion to the Destricide, you know, things like that, more models, more design, more animations. I was just wondering if in the evolution of the game, maybe you thought that far ahead, or, you know, something like that. To,
No,
you know,
I haven't
create
thought
more
that far ahead.
versatility. I don't know. This is just for the thing I'm asking, like, you know, a healer engineer, or as you already made a tank engineer, or I don't know, a tank zealot. So I'm just saying crazy things. Just saying, you know, expand the possibilities.
Yeah, we have some, obviously. I went through all the specs at request. We have expanded. I don't think we will for a while. If we, it would definitely be way after launch if we did.
Yeah. You mentioned, I don't know, about an hour ago that as expansions, we're gonna get like Land of the Dead and some other things.
Mhm.
Regarding Land of the Dead specifically, you guys want to have it like PvE, PvP mix that it was on live, or some version of that, or you're gonna do something already like a scenario kind of type of thing, or do you have a completely different idea for, you know, for that?
It's completely different, and it's part of the RVR document that I'm not allowed to talk about.
Right. Okay. Cool.
Let's shut that up pretty quick.
Well,
I
I mean, you
mean-
know, I'm not gonna push him. Look, I understand his
I'm
position.
trying so
It's a difficult position.
I'm playing.
It's a difficult position. I understand.
It
So he
is.
says I can't talk. That's it.
It's difficult because we want to talk about it, but we can't. All right now.
Yeah, but the thing is, I got an answer. It's not going to be a scenario. It's not going to be like live. It's going to be something. I got an answer. I got something out of it. It wasn't completely like no answer. You know what I mean? You have to read between the
Yep.
lines, buddy.
Yep. I mean, I give as much of an answer as I can. I don't want to be one of those
Not a
devs
problem.
on video games that
Not
gives
a
up shit they're
problem.
not supposed to,
Not a problem.
which happens all the time.
Yeah.
Anybody else? No? All right. I suppose 3 hours and 20 minutes was pretty good.
And also, one thing as well, I don't know if I believe I messaged quite a bit of you on this altogether. So, you know, this is also inside the announcements as well. So we were just reaching out to everyone here, just making sure that it was just it was a non-privileged sort of like get together all together. Just want to make sure that's kind of clear to everybody. Was just more of reaching out. I know quite a few of you from the other server, because again, I've
It was
been
based
playing.
on your discussion temperaments. That's
Yes, that was also it too. Based off of just interaction with the community and seeing where everybody was, and no one was gonna be flaming each other or anything like that. That would be the biggest thing there. But you know,
Basically, we didn't want Void to have to work during this.
I know just a little bit, but again, we do want to look for temperaments as well. So that'd be the biggest one. So yeah.
Well, we're
We probably
happy
should have
to
said at the
be
beginning of the
here.
recording.
Yeah,
We're
I'm
happy to
gonna
be here anyway. So
I think at the once when I do the editing, and then I'll put that in real quick because it's forgot about it.
all right, so we're done with the questions and all that.
I know there's more going to be coming.
Just checking.
I do know for a fact that there's probably going to be one question on about this. At least
I
the
do
answer
have a
for it.
meme question if you want. That's been sitting on my question list, but it's a meme question. So do you want it or not?
Go for it. I don't care. I said
Okay.
anything.
43.
All right. No. We're still gonna have the issue of Chopper versus Slayer.
You're talking
Get
about
to the Chopper
Rampage?
Rampage. Yeah. Have we done
sure,
something on that?
I've got a perfect answer for Rampage.
I'm asking this for two reasons. I said it's a meme one because number one, I am sick and tired every time I stream to have this argument. I've been streaming for like 5 years. Warhammer is like every single day I have this argument on the stream. It's kind of like tiring. And two, because I had like 20 people ask me about this, and I said, okay, fine, I'll just ask it and be done with it. So
yeah, we actually got a lot of that in the Q&A too. So I answered it indirectly in the Q&A. Interbellum does not have undefendable damage. I have not a single freaking ability that I have made in this game is undefendable. This Rampage doesn't exist. That's gone.
Rampage is not undefendable anyways.
And Rampage makes your attacks undefendable.
It bypasses parry and block. It also goes to the guard damage.
Right.
Well, so but you still have armor and resistance to work with.
Well,
yeah, okay.
So when I say undefendable, I mean avoidances. Right, unmitigatable is yeah. There's no unavoidable attacks. So like if you try to hit somebody, even with an adrenaline skill, they have a chance to dodge it. And block it. But block is not exactly getting rid of the skill. But like they have a chance to dodge it.
What about the get to the chopper thing?
As for get to the chopper, that doesn't exist either.
Okay.
That tells you how much I'm tired of that argument too.
Yeah, the get to the chopper is, I think, the thing that I hate the most about it is not the whole pool situation more people get upset about. What I hate about is that is 5 skills. Effectively, it's 5 skills in one button.
Yes.
That's what I will dislike, because you have the damage component, you have the pull component, you have the speed component, you have the interrupt component, and you have the spin around disorientation component, and I don't think I forgot something. So it always for me felt unfair to have 5 things in one button. So if
unfortunately,
you guys fix that...
Fortunately, both Yoluigi and Luth are not here. It's just people who have played Slayer and Choppa on our tests. We made those classes more about actually dealing damage rather than, gimmicks.
I mean, it was a good idea as skills go. You know what I mean? You got a pool that was an interrupt and this and that. So it was working like this.
I mean, what it felt like to me, what it felt like to me is someone took the word Choppa, grabbed the Arnold Schwarzenegger quote, right? Get to the Choppa. As a joke, and then built an ability based off of it. That's what it looks like to me.
Yeah, pretty much.
Considering that, and you got Mythic's idea of like mostly mirroring, right? They've got if something may not be mirrored directly onto its exact mirror class, but usually it's put somewhere else. And the fact that like get to the Choppa is nowhere else on Order, and Rampage is nowhere else on Destro, kind of flies in the face of what most of what Mythic's design ended up being after their initial launch.
You are right about this. Most of the skills can be found somewhere else. Like, for example, the package of the engineer, because in my opinion, engineer is the most versatile class and can do anything from support to DPS to tanking.
That sounds
to...
like bias.
Well, I do play. Everybody knows me. I'm not hiding anything. I always had 100% transparency. I love engineers. Yes, I am biased towards the engineers. Not all dwarves, engineers. But the thing
Well,
is,
the other
it's
dwarves
so
are shorter.
versatile. The engineer package is broken between the squig and a little bit on the magus and a little bit on the marauder. So it does exist on Destro, but it's not in one place. So I've always found that when you have all the classes, there was some sort of a balance, between the two sides. But when you have the thing Rampage, get to the chopper, it doesn't exist anywhere else. You kind of lose it when you stack those classes. You lose that balance, no matter how many more you bring in. So I'm happy to hear that those skills don't exist in that kind of way anymore, and that will restore some sort of a balance there. Because I'll just, for the reference, there was a time when warbands were running 8 to 9 choppers for specific reasons, and the counter was 8 to 9 bright wizards. Well, there was a counter. I'm not gonna look into who was winning more or losing, more or whatever on the fight between those two, but it did create an unbalance into the class system in this sense.
Especially when it takes
Warband,
160 hours to make a class.
Yeah, but the thing is, gameplay-wise, because look, a lot of the builds, and I say this to people all the time, a lot of the builds on paper may look good, may not work in game.
Yep.
A build may look bad on the paper in some aspects and work great in the game. You have to test the builds before you put them. In modern games, the builds come out before the game come out even. And, you have to tweak them afterwards. This is why when I make builds, I say to people, let me level up, let me test it for a week and see if it actually works. The problem it created is that the people stack like 8 choppers on one side and 8 bright wizards on the other to counter it and the other way around. So all the other classes, they were just sitting there thinking, where the hell am I going to play in a warband? Nobody wants me. So these imbalances have to be removed, which I think you already have on your systems. And this is what makes the game interesting. I'm done.
Anyone else?
No, I mean, sorry, I don't know if I spoke too long, but
Nope, it's fine. Anyone else? I'm
good for now.
I'm here to answer questions and ask them.
Yeah, I'm good for now.
Not currently. I think I have to wait for what the community is going to ask again. Yeah, well, it's the feedback of the community. See what they want. See what the questions that pop up for them.
Oh, I'm sure I'll be inundated with a lot of them after this.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure you will.
Yeah,
we'll try and filter them out for you. I'm hoping people will ask me the question to make a list for you.
I don't have YouTube or Twitch or anything like that, but I am a part of a lot of communities on Discord communities for the game, so I'll make sure to tell as many people as I can about this.
For sure. We'll definitely be uploading this to the Interbellum YouTube channel as well, and then of course if anybody had somewhat questions. Well, I'm gonna so what I do is when I cut things down, I cut it down right to the sections. But the problem is there was so much talking that I'm not gonna be able to.
Silence.
There was 3 times when I played Jeopardy music.
Yeah, but not a lot.
No, but I mean 3 hours of audio is not hard to edit or at least upload, because you're just uploading an audio file. That's really it. Audio files are quite small. I'm not gonna lie. I'm already looking at my 2-hour video right now. It's already 230 gigs right now. So, it's there. I mean, I have the space for it. I mean, I'm just hit record, let it go through. You know what I mean? But
I'm probably just gonna take the whole thing as it is and put it up there.